All events took place at the Dragon Slayer Academy. This is a presentation of the characters who study at this academy. Every day of their training they inevitably encounter monsters. And most importantly, he was considered an old hand in this game and was number 1 on the leaderboard. Also, the strongest supports in the game were represented here, and he was at the head and was number 1. In one of the battles, there was a huge monster with an open mouth and sharp fangs in front of him. Another one present in this game was Saint Lee, so he was a C rank. Also in this game was the master of the Ruby Tower Hong Hyun. He was also a C rank. A huge monster entered the battle and was attacked by one of the participants of this academy. Without thinking twice, he pierced this huge monster through and then cut it into pieces. This representative of the academy was a dark knight named Gui Yihan. He was also a C rank. After this battle was over, all the students of this academy headed for the exit as the task was completed. But in all of this, his favorite mechanic was the blood gem, which was used to upgrade the vampires class. The guy shouted for Carmilla to come to him. He found that very bloody gem and wanted her to see it too. In fact, they took new recruits from the academy and raised them to be heroes and then trained them to be the best of the best crank fighters. The guy handed her a crystal and told her to take it. It was meant especially for her. After some time, everything was ready. She became the queen of vampires named Carmilla. She was already of rank C. She was also its 1000th graduate. The guy sat in front of the computer monitor, raised his hands up, and thought about what would happen next. Then he started to take off his headphones, realizing that there was nothing left for him in this game. After all, he raised each class to C rank. After many repetitions, he thought maybe now he can teach ordinary ones. At that moment, he saw a notification come to him. He was surprised because usually they were quite rare. When he opened this notification, he was even more surprised that 1000 crank graduates were ready, and he had achieved a legendary achievement that no one had ever achieved before a special title was available to him. At that moment, the guy wondered if there were hidden quests in this game. The notification said he had prevented no world. It was E's rank difficulty, and it was a quest with reincarnation. Then he thought that most likely there were E's rank items in this game as well as a hero of the same rank. He decided that if the developers had released a new update, he saw no reason not to dive into this game again. The task was accepted. As soon as he clicked on the mouse, he found himself inside this game. He thought, is it really in the description of the task and mercy in leading his reincarnation in the world of the game? I looked around and thought that it looked like a forest from training, and if that's the case, he'll have to start all over again. But he also understood that he needed status first. It was serious. He looked and saw that they had demolished everything. He was a little upset because he thought he didn't have any special ability for reincarnation or anything like that, but the next moment he received another notification and was very surprised because he saw bonuses for reincarnation. So he thought that his rank was gone, but he decided that he would get it back in time. At least they gave him something to work with, and he also received a reward. The very next moment he saw that he had received a training task. He thought that he remembered that he just needed to dodge the weakest mobs. The next magnet, I looked around and decided that everything was not going as he thought, and these sounds were not like the weakest mobs. He raised his head up and saw huge dragons approaching him. At that moment he realized that 2 crank bosses were right on the set and the difficulty was E's rank. The guy stood with his head raised up, looked, and understood that if this was his day, he would burn out before he had time to get scared. The next moment the mind decided that this was most likely the perfect moment to test the copying skill it had. To copy a trait, he must see it in action. Nothing more important. He needs to determine the name and rank of the target. He set himself a task and thought that it was very simple and it would be easy for him to complete it. The very next moment he had a message where it was written that the fire resistance feature had been added. Then he thought that it was great. Everything worked out for him. He didn't expect to get a crank trait at the very beginning. He considered himself lucky because fire resistance significantly weakens the entire fire uranium. At that moment he thought that he would like to get the skill, but without a mana core, he still won't be able to use it, and for now it's enough for him to intercept crank traits. The next moment he didn't understand what was happening and why the wind started blowing in the opposite direction. He raised his head and saw a huge fire dragon trying to attack him. This fire dragon turned from red to blue the next moment, and he understood something dangerous. After all, it was a breath attack. It was one of the dragon's most dangerous attacks. He understood that even with fire resistance, he wouldn't be able to do anything, so he started to run away quickly, because he understood perfectly well that if the dragon hit him but at such a small distance, then he will most likely die because he will not be able to resist him. The next moment everything happened as he expected. The dragon began to attack the breath. At that moment he received a message that his training was completed and he was about to receive a reward. he became a student at the Dragon Slayer Academy, and he was also told that he had to take a train to get to the academy. When he entered this train, he saw a girl apologized and asked if she could stand up for a while because there were no seats left. She didn't hear an answer. He continued and said that she wouldn't mind if he sat next to her. But there was no answer. He then asked her if she was really asleep and didn't hear anything. The guy apologized to her for waking her up and said that he would go further. Most likely there were still free seats here. The second guy replied that technically no and said that she didn't say anything anyway. The girl heard his conversation, raised her head and looked at the two guys. One of them approached the girl and said that she wouldn't mind if they sat down with her, and she agreed. One of the guys introduced himself and said that his name was Kim Ho, and the girl responded that her name was So Yun. The guy also told the second guy that no one would mind if his husband sat down too. Then the second guy thanked him and introduced himself as Go Hyun Woo. He started saying that I was grateful because he almost had to stand the whole way. He would definitely return his kindness. The guy asked what took him so long. Then he began to tell that he saw two ancient dragons on the way. He was so absorbed in looking that he managed to get lost. His new friend said that he did the same and almost died. At that moment, when they were already sitting in their seats, the train departed for the Dragon Slayer Academy, the place where he once returned for new heroes. He knew the academy perfectly well. Alabiu was so familiar that he managed to get a bunch of us, but this time there was one significant difference. He met Go Hyun and So Yun. When he looked around, he saw many students and instructors whom he had never seen before. At that moment, he thought that the world remained the same, but the characters had changed, which meant that events with tasks could develop differently. He needed to be aware of all the changes. Besides, he caught himself thinking that the girl who was sitting next to him was constantly looking at him. He immediately determined that So Yun had the kind of eyes that evaluate everything she sees. For example, the couple sitting opposite him have skills in fencing with the wind of the heavenly sword and features of fencing with a core. He has nothing special. But Kim Ho was different. His status was undetermined and everything else was also special. The girl could count on half a finger of her fashionable hand the times she saw such windows with her status. At that moment he turned and asked her what she was staring at. She remembered the words of her mentor who told her that if she was interested in someone she should try to do something good for him. That's why I opened my suitcase that was standing next to him and climbed inside. Inside the suitcase in the side pocket there was a bag of cookies, which was exactly what she wanted to get. The girl took out one cookie, handed it to the guy and asked if he wanted it. The guy, without thinking, extended his hand and into the hall the cookie that was offered to him. The only thing he asked about was well homemade. The girl said yes, it didn't taste that bad. The guy turned to Go Hyun Woo and asked him if he would mind if he asked him what he was interested in. What was that big thing that was next to him? Was it really a sword? Chief Henwoo answered him that he understood correctly that this is a sacred relic of his clan. It is a pity that he is not yet worthy of breaking its seal, so it remains tied up for now. He explained that until then this iron blade would protect his company, but they shouldn't worry, he hadn't met anyone who couldn't win with it. The guy took a bite of the cookie and asked again if that was really the case, but then remarked that maybe he should find a more tame blade. Another guy came into their room. He abruptly opened the door and demanded their attention. He stated that they probably wouldn't mind his presence. Everyone said they were okay with him sitting wherever he felt comfortable. Then he was surprised because he hadn't heard him. He didn't understand why he should join them. This new guy looked at him and said that he figured him out honestly, and then added that they should just call Shin Benchatsel. It's a Dragon Slayer Academy-style delivery service. If they pay the price, they will bring whatever they ask for. The guys were surprised and asked if they could really do anything and even bring something that violates the rules of the academy. They heard in response that they definitely just need to wish and say. One of the guys asked him why he was always staring out the window as if someone was chasing him. He laughed and said that it seemed obvious now. After which he said that he was ready to talk about it. A little later, the door of their carriage opened slightly. This guy understood that things were bad for the diva and he stuck to the glass trying to push it away. He clearly heard the voices of the academic representatives walking down the corridor shouting that he could go out. They knew where he was. The guy ran out into the ship. It was clear that the disciplinary squad was already there. The Student Discipline Committee is responsible for maintaining order in and around the academy. First-year students are recruited as early as possible for training and then released on a direct train. This is how this time the girl shouted at him to return it because this thing is not for his hands, and stretched out her hand. It was clear that he was in a worse situation. He should hurry up. He started running as if someone was showering a lot of money. All attempts were stopped. The girl stopped him. She was a magician with the element of lightning. In fact, such magicians were a great rarity. He realized that his copying ability could copy another skill, and he decided to appropriate something useful for himself. The guy who was running away shouted that his situation was bad, and that he was also disgusting in direct combat. The girl said, "Isn't he giving up? Otherwise she has no choice but to just knock him out." She put on a glove and snapped her 3 fingers, which was enough to start the attack. The next thing she did was aim a hummingbird at this guy to knock him out. The guy tried to cover his face and head with both hands, but it was a downy mess. At that moment, the main character, who decided to copy her ability for himself, stuck out his hand. He caught her attack in order to concentrate it in his hands and then copy it. All the force that the girl directed at the intruder was concentrated in the guy's hand. At that moment, the girl from the disciplinary squad was very surprised. Did he really have an accomplice? The guy got out of the car and said that it was a bit different. He wanted to introduce himself. When the guy went out into the long corridor, he said that he stuck his hand out because his cookie fell out. The girl looked at him and didn't understand what he was saying and what kind of cookie he had. Of course, he managed to copy the hummingbird's magical support skill. The guy looked down and said that it was his cookie, and because of her he dropped it. It was very tasty and they made him angry. One of the disciplinary team members said that this was a baseless accusation and that if he didn't step aside while they were being kind, he would show him what pain was. The guys got out of their carriage and said that they hoped that he would act wisely and carefully, and also said that if he decided to take out his sword, Tom would not stand idly by either. After these words, there was silence in the long corridor for a while, and they stood there silently looking at each other. The red-haired girl from the disciplinary squad raised her hand and said that they should wait because they were ready to send him a coupon for a free dessert in the student cafeteria. The guys thought about it and were happy with this offer because this could also be done instead of the cookies he dropped. The only one who was worried about what would happen to him next was their new acquaintance. At that moment, he thought that he was grateful to this girl for the skill now he had, copying not just a skill but also a hummingbird. The girl grabbed the guy by the hair and was very surprised because he stole the station worker's wig. This prank went too far. She turned around and went the other way, saying that he allowed her to give her advice so that the guy wouldn't get involved with Shin Byungchul, but he replied that it was up to him to decide. Then the disciplinary squad turned around and started to leave. Only one of the guys said that he remembered him. After this, the guys started discussing among themselves. They realized that most likely these guys from the student disciplinary committee were choosing them from among the elite, and the one who hit him with the caliber skill was Song Chun-hai. He was a little surprised, and so he asked again if she was from the Topaz of the Magic Tower. They answered that yes, she is from the Sun family, and she is the granddaughter of the Lightning King's son, Kyungwook. The other 3 should not be underestimated either. The one with the short haircut is called Chobek, and he is a disciple of the King of Fists. And another representative who was with them is Han Somi. She is a disciple of the Queen of the Sword. Dora's boyfriend held a sword in his hands. He was the only heir to the Golden Lotus Pavilion. And his name is Jem Yohan. At that moment, their new acquaintance stood up and began to leave the carriage. He said that he was glad to meet them and that they would talk next time. Go Hyun-woo turned to Kim's brother and asked him if she really stood up for the cookie, to which he replied that the girl was a rare lightning mage and he was curious to see what she could do. Go Hyun-woo then told him that he easily blocked one of Song's skills. The guy asked him again that he even knew hummingbird skills. He replied that it was the first time they had seen him. I thought for a bit and didn't understand that the skill she showed was so fast that it was difficult to see anything in time. The only thing that was clear was that the place where the damage was inflicted was intended to paralyze or immobilize the target. The guy said he was half right. Then he went to find out what the other half was, and he told him the spell was called Hummingbird because it depicts the flight of a bird. In fact, its capabilities vary depending on the skill of execution, that is, the movement of birds can be determined by the skill of the magician. If Song Chun-hai was truly experienced at the moment he intervened, her hummingbird's trajectory would have immediately changed. In fact, everything was completely different. He put his hand out and it didn't have time to change its trajectory. The bird that Allah released flew straight into his hand, which means either she lacks control or combat experience. Go Hyun-woo noticed that one spell and how much information was revealed. The guy thought that of course this is not all. He found out that she was on an E-rank spell at the drank level. Either she had a good trait or huge natural mana reserves. In any case, the granddaughter of the Lightning King matches the name. Go Hyun-woo raised his hand to his face and said that they had just met and he had already learned a lot. It was fate that the guy replied that it was unlikely that fate was involved in this. He could freely teach something like that. Go Hyun-woo then said that he is very generous, and if you need his help, don't hesitate to ask. He will do everything in his power. The guy looked at him and said, is this really true? Then he added that in that case he should go with him and asked him to first lend him some silver, to which his new friend was very surprised. Going into another room, he abruptly tore the cover off the device, which was closed. A regular casino slot machine, but it said it didn't work. The guy started to tell me that this train was originally intended for tourism, and they are now located on the site of a former casino, and he can see a little mess here. Go Hyun-woo was very surprised. I said that this machine is broken. Why does he need silver? The guy replied that it might be possible, but he tried to toss a coin. He just wanted to try playing. In his mind, he understood that this was some kind of secret event like a broken slot machine. He also thought that why not take advantage of the opportunities that presented themselves. I was looking at the machine that was spinning right in front of me and wondering what would happen next. At that moment, I saw a bottle of water. They both looked at this water and thought that this was not what he really wanted, but he didn't expect anything more. Go Hyun-woo asked his friend why he came to court, to which he replied that technically it was against school rules. The problem wasn't with the machine itself, but with the items it dispensed. Go Hyun-woo then asked him if they will stand guard for him, to which I heard that yes. Well, in fact, the disciplinary committee often doesn't look into this room most likely, but they go in the opposite direction. At that moment, they heard the voice of one of the girls from the disciplinary committee. She said hello to them and asked what they were doing there. It was Han Somi. She told the boys not to play with the machine. Students are forbidden from even touching it. Breaking school rules can be punished with fines and points. He thought he could buy them some time. The girl continued to say that helping someone break the rules was also breaking the rules. Go Hyun-woo showed me that he understood everything and said that he would take such a risk. It was his decision. After which he took out his sword and said that he heard that Lady Han was an expert in swordsmanship and he wanted to see her skills. The girl asked his name. The guy introduced himself, after which she pushed off, lunged forward, and began to attack, shouting, "Let it be as he wants." A little more and she would have been able to inflict damage, but he was able to repel this attack by raising his sword right in front of his chest. After which he threw the girl with the sword back with all his strength. Her attack was unsuccessful. She was very surprised how this was possible, but she was not going to give up and decided to attack again. That's why she pushed off and took a few quick steps forward. After which she swung and tried to strike again, but this time the guy was able to avoid this blow with the help of his sword. He looked at him and thought that this guy also lacked internal strength and his core was somewhat weak, but he was not going to give in to him, and he still had something to show. It was clear that enhancement was already being used. Since the target core trait is increased from rank E to C, the duration is 58 seconds, the cooldown is 59 minutes, so it only needs to last 1 minute. After hiring Senoi and another blow from the girls, he was able to repel it for a long time, which was 19 seconds. Immediately after this blow, another blow followed, and it lasted for 15 seconds. It was possible to observe how the duration decreased with each second and was already 14 seconds. The guy turned his head and thought that such slot machines are one of the most famous casino games. Usually players don't like to lose coins this way, but they don't know something. He was sure that this machine had a mechanism for guaranteed big winnings, and this mechanism was called a guarantor. Regular players start the game with only 5 coins, but this was already his 5th spin, and he expected that it would be his winning one. In fact, this is how he wanted to win big, with the help of his wife and the coin that was in his hands, because the machine was guaranteed to give out the best reward on the 6th try. In other words, on the 6th time, the probability of winning the jackpot was 100%. Indeed, it was the 6th time he had obtained a crank dark ice crystal. It had a freezing cold taste. It had to be handled with care and could kill him. He was glad that he had succeeded. The battle between the disciplinary squad representative and Go Hyun-woo continued. The girl continued to attack. He looked at what was happening between them and thought that this was most likely not the end. Well, in fact, the duration he needed was only 1 second. So he thought he had seen enough and drank the reward he received, the dark ice crystal. When he did this, the girl tried to stop him, saying that if he ate it, but the frozen effect had already been added. He felt a sore throat. The frozen effect was added after a few seconds of such pain. He was already fine, which he told them about. They wanted to know what kind of bottle he drank. The guy said that in simple terms it was some kind of elixir that replenishes mana after knocking it out. It was one of the guaranteed items of the guarantor on the 6th chest, and it was a crystal of dark ice for beginners overly accustomed to deadly poison. Just one tiny crystal is probably capable of turning into an ice statue. Of course, it was an exception, since he had a crank elemental resistance, and every time a frozen effect was added, the same effect was instantly removed, and in the end the harmful cold disappeared. A huge amount of ice crystal energy accumulated in his body. Go Hyun-woo told him that it seemed like he convinced the girl of what had happened, although she said that it wasn't quite true if she had bought into this Chu, that she was a complete fool. Go Hyunwoo laughed and said that he was glad to help his brother, and thanks to him he got to spar on equal terms with Lady Han. The guy replied that he had also helped him a lot by lending him silver. Go Hyunwoo asked to see this technique again, to which the guy replied that next time he couldn't use it yet and didn't want to reveal all his cards. Someone present said that they were almost there as they were on the island underground. This was the last stop of this train. This island was so named because it is full of dungeons, and in the past it was a lawless place full of all kinds of bandits. One day when the first hero and dragon slayer entered the dungeon island, he cleared it of criminals and conquered all the dungeons. He also built a city and founded an academy, and that's how the Dragon Slayer Academy came into being. When the train arrived at the station, those greeting it shouted for the first-year students to gather in one place. The greeter also asked the freshmen not to go anywhere and not to follow the seniors. Go Hyunwoo thought that there was a wonderful atmosphere here. The guy looked around and saw a girl with a tiger cub on her shoulders and wondered how many people there were. When they approached the entrance, he heard a voice that asked him for forgiveness. It was the girl from the disciplinary squad who said that he should come with her for a minute. Within a few minutes, he was in the office of the disciplinary committee and was asked to sit down. In fact, everyone who enters this room already leaves it with Sasha. It was a different room, really. The first question he was asked in this room was that he ate what fell out of the slot machine, but the display showed a result, and it was clear that he was fine. Even the debuff measuring device showed that everything was clear. The guy realized that the frozen status had passed long ago. Then the person who examined him said that apparently it really wasn't a prohibited item. Well, this person also turned to Kim Ho and said whether he knew it or not, but not following the orders of the disciplinary committee is a violation of the rules. This was Oh Si-hoon, a third-year student and the head of the academy's disciplinary committee. Then he added that since no one was hurt and this was his first violation, he would turn a blind eye to this act, but still expressed hope that this was their last meeting. The guy stood up and said that he understood everything, after which the head of the disciplinary committee asked about the girl. It seems she is not thrilled with him, to which Chunha replied that no matter how you look at it, his actions are suspicious. She believed that if his goal was not a prohibited item, then there was no point in using the slot machine. There was no point in getting rid of the result on the spot. She saw everything herself. The girl said that there is a high probability that he has illegal skills. If they use force to test his skills, they can expose him. The head of the disciplinary committee said, but if they don't find anything, and if they go all the way to using force to check and don't find anything, what should they do then? At that moment, the girl realized that she was wrong. She bowed and said that it seemed like she had rushed. The head of the disciplinary committee said that in such cases they need to step back and look at the big picture. He also added that they were late for the inauguration ceremony. There were a lot of first-year students in the hall where the entrance ceremony was held. Go Hyunwoo took a seat for his new friend. At that moment, he received a message that the training had already been completed and he arrived at the entrance ceremony on time. The guy was surprised that he even received an A-rank weapon. It was better than nothing. And I also unexpectedly got back the money I spent on the slot machine. At that moment, a guy who was yawning a lot came out to the car with a girl. When everyone saw him, they couldn't understand whether this was the rector. He didn't look like him at all because according to tradition, the head of the Dragon Slayer Academy was a retired hero who returned from the front lines. And by the way, the hero's deed is given to only one representative of the C rank out of countless numbers of them. It may not have been visible at the moment, but the necessary strength was seething inside him. Oh, at this point someone said that they were already rejected 4 times, and someone else noted that no, as far as I know, they were recently rejected again 5 times. The rector who stood in front of them said welcome to them, and they sincerely congratulated them on their admission to the Dragon Slayer Academy. He began to say that a long time ago the Dragon Slayer Academy was founded, and as is clear from the name, to prepare for the war with dragons and to train people to kill dragons. He also said that the first hero insisted on the word killer in the title, most likely to make them think deeply about who a killer is. After all, it was impossible to be an orc killer without killing them. Also, in this case, you can't be a killer of a dragon without killing the dragon itself. The guy sat and thought about only one thing: when will he finish? And he continued his life, essentially the fate of a dragon slayer. They should not turn away from the truth, but they should rather ask themselves why he decided to become a killer, why he is looking for such a life, and at that moment everyone was happy. Even the rector's assistant showed him for a while, but he said that he hoped they would all become true heroes of the Dragon Slayer Academy. At that moment, Go Hyunwoo said that this was a truly meaningful speech. The guy asked him again if he was bored, to which she replied that every word was full of priceless wisdom. After the rector spoke, his assistant said that she was asking for attention this year. The list of prohibited items had been expanded. Any of these items found in their possession would be immediately confiscated, and they would be subject to disciplinary action. She also warned them for the future that all new students are allowed to receive practical classes only on the first floor of the dungeon building. If they go down to the lower floor without permission, their clan magic tower or guild may encounter problems. It was clear that curiosity could bring misfortune to everyone. She asked them to remember these rules and follow them to avoid consequences. After which she said that the entrance ceremony was over and asked everyone to return to their dorms for lunch. Everyone was glad that everything was over. I really only wanted one thing at that moment, just to eat, but they saw another friend of theirs. They asked Shin's brother what happened, and he told them that if they were just scratched, they shouldn't worry. He also told them that he advised them to have a good meal at night. They did not understand why. He then said that tomorrow was the first day of their classes, and it was an important day. That same day in the boys' dorm, Go Hyun-woo was very happy because their rooms were next to each other, which was a pleasant coincidence. In fact, he wasn't as pleased as his new friend that their rooms were next to each other. After he entered, he thought that he definitely wouldn't sleep. He took off his jacket and the rest of the ones he was wearing and hung them neatly in the closet. The guy sat on his bed and started meditating in his free time moments like this. He understood that the most important thing for him was to create a core within himself in order to use any skill that required mana or internal energy. He needed to have an internal source of energy, and that was the role of the core. It was his first time doing something like this in real life, but he had a good idea of what and how to do so. He absorbed the ice crystal so that the small one was more than enough, and he knew that he could handle it. You were in the room next to him. It was the room of his new friend Go Hyun-woo. He sat and thought about Han Somfy and that she was the strongest and the subscriber he met with while walking down the mountain. In fact, they both held back a little during the fight. Well, even if they had given it their all, it would have been difficult to predict the outcome. If it weren't for the help of his new friend Kim Ho, who allowed him to compensate for his disadvantage, he would most likely have lost even before his sword broke. Strength. What word did Go Hyun-woo associate with Kim Ho first, and their meetings here? The type of calm available only to the strong gaze of one who sees the whole. Go Hyun-woo in his room looked at his sword and wondered if he should ask for help. But on the other hand, he calmed you down and said that no, you can't do this. He's his first friend of this academy. He only thought that he would do everything in his power, and this thought made him feel much better. The next day came, and all the first-year students gathered in the temporary room. A girl who had been sleeping the whole time came into the room and barely said good morning. Go Hyun-woo answered her that he was afraid that she would oversleep. One of the boys asked where the teacher was, but they had no idea. The boy thought the bell rang, but it seemed much louder, so he concluded that they didn't know who their class teacher was, but that someone was clearly irresponsible. The doors opened slightly and perforce started talking among themselves that their leader had arrived. When they saw who their leader was, their faces instantly changed. There were no smiles. The leader said that judging by their reaction, he is quite famous and is happy to meet them this year. He will be their homeroom teacher. And he also introduced himself as Lee Sudok, after which he extended his hand towards one of the people present in the room and asked him to say what the students call him. The guy replied, Villain Hunter. The manager said that this was wrong. He has another nickname, and it is in one word. At that moment, the guy said Butcher. Now it was clear what he is. In the world of Dragon Slayer Academy, superhumans have surpassed human limitations more than there is sand on the beach, and among them, there are those who use their powers to satisfy their perverted desires. The existence of such villains is inevitable. Lee Sudoku was tasked with hunting and capturing such villains, but his nickname suggests he has killed far more than he has captured alive. The director said that he did not want to be in this position, but he accepted the rector's request, and he also added that no matter how many jobs he took on, he did not fail in any of them. He also said that he really hoped that none of them would notice his perfect track record. He would rather kill them than let them fail their exams. After which he turned around, took a piece of chalk, and wrote on the board the topic they would be discussing, and he also said that he would explain the student evaluation system. 30% are taken up by written assignments, another 10% are for behavior, for the fact that they breathe and do not get into trouble. For some of them, this will be free gel points. The bill for the conduct may go into the negative, therefore it will affect the rest of the grades. He will keep an eye on those who are rotten. He said that no one knows, maybe they will meet again after graduation. Then the most important part is the exams. Practical exams are divided into dungeon raids where they will defend the dungeon floors. In duels where they will compete with other students, the assessment goes in an arc. In other words, they need to show better results than the student next to them. What about read that duels give 30% of their score? He said they have more questions. Everyone remained silent. Then the manager said that in this case they can go to the arena. After they reached arena, he declared that it was time to test their abilities. Their new acquaintance said that this is the big event of the big day. Go Hyunwoo answered now it is clear to him what he meant yesterday. To prepare students for different situations, the rules of the duel changed every time. This time the rules of the duel were a fight to the death. Well, not exactly to the death, called a fight to the death. It ended when one of the parties was exhausted or surrendered. The time of the fight was limited to 15 minutes. If the winner was not determined, the judge decided or declared it nothing. The guy explained that each of them would fight with 3 randomly selected students from their year and would receive points depending on the number of victories. 300 points for one victory. In the event of a draw or loss, they received 0 points, but points were not lost. At that moment, he thought that means he needs to win the duel at least once and also perform well during the raid. It's a good task, but at the moment something else was important. These exams are the perfect time to study other students who attended this academy. It was also a chance to find those who had the potential to reach their rank. Or, on the contrary, remember a student whose traits or skills are worth copying. A little later, the leader called Kim Ho another student Hong Yonghwa who was supposed to make a forward check. His caller was from the Ruby Tower. In fact, the Ruby Tower specialized in magic. They were known for their great firepower and incredible territory control, but they weren't always his favorites in the game, so he thought it would be better if she just played along with him for those 5 minutes. His opponent thought that she wanted to make a name for herself, and to do this she needed to defeat someone famous. She thought that no one knew this guy she had to fight. She also saw an ordinary stick in his hands. She didn't understand what kind of weapon it was. Even a beginner in training, a mage, would only snort contemptuously at this rank earth staff. She looked at him, and I thought that he was clearly not from the Emerald Tower, and he also didn't look like an earth mage, so he most likely uses Pog to enhance his defensive magic. She thought that the length of the Sokka showed that he preferred strength to mobility. In short, she decided that he was a stationary support mage. At that moment, they were given the command to begin. The first thing she used was the ignition skill. She thought that she would quickly finish everything with one attack. She heard everyone start saying wow and how strong her spell is. Something sparkled at that moment. Everyone was delighted with the power of the Ruby Tower. Well, when she raised her eyes, she was very surprised because she saw the score on the scoreboard and she and Kim Ho had 100%. The girl thought that this couldn't be. She expected to win with one blow, but this. At that moment he stood looking at her and thought that his attack did nothing at all, but he received the same percentage as she did. She was so upset by the different result that she decided to immediately attack again. She didn't understand how it was possible that she hadn't done anything at all, and whether he had really used dispersal. In this case, the girl decided that she did not need to hesitate, and she lived in this case to attack him again with greater force. She was completely sure that he would not be able to defend himself against such a dispersal attack as the previous time. I wanted it to move a little, and as soon as it opens she will immediately react to it. But she didn't understand what was going on and why this guy whom she considered a weakling didn't give up. And most importantly, she didn't understand why he wouldn't move from his place. He just stood in one place. Then she decided that if he was so confident in his own abilities, then she would use another ability of hers. She would be furious. She then shouted at him, "Let's see how he blocks the next attack." It was a table of fire, which was directed towards him and which was supposed to move him from his place. A magical pillar of fire shot towards him, and the girl believed that she had achieved victory in this round. Mom Luda's ears at that moment started talking about how I was expected to see the Ruby Tower. She will use all her powers. But who was surprised when after her powerful attack she saw a completely undamaged guy in front of her. She thought that her magic of the future master of the Ruby Tower did not cause him even a scratch. She would have understood that if their battle continued at this pace, she would have to use her trump card. At that moment she saw that he began to attack her hummingbird. The girl managed to dodge this attack at the last moment so that it did not hit her. But after the first attack he attacked her again, and she was unable to dodge and was given the paralysis status. She slowly sank to her knees and couldn't do anything about it. At this point, Kim Ho suggested to his rivals that they should stop there. He said that he thought she wanted to save her trump card for later and was ready to surrender to him this time. He told her to think about the next battles that lay ahead of her. At that moment, the scoreboard showed that the guy had won and his opponent had lost. Everyone was surprised how this had happened and who this promising newcomer was. At this point, the guy thought that he had stood out much more than he had expected and he needed to be more careful. At that moment, Kim Ho was called to fight. The guy wondered if he was going to do it again, and they didn't even give him a chance to rest. This time, his opponent was supposed to be Song Chun-hai, the same girl from the base tower who was immediately enrolled in the disciplinary committee. When Song Chun-hai saw her opponent, she said that it was a great luck that she met him and she wanted to check something. The guy looked at her and thought that he didn't want to show what he would do, and since his points were saved, he made a decision. He said that he was giving up even before the fight started. He had no intention of fighting her. The leader of their group was surprised at that moment. He wanted to understand why he wasn't going to fight. The guy said that he wasn't feeling well and it would be difficult for him to continue the battle, so the manager immediately asked if it wouldn't be better to increase the score while it was still possible. The manager wanted to ask if he still wanted to give up. The guy said something and there was nothing he could do about it. After which he ate his fists. They said they should immediately record the change in the third Bayou too. The leader said that he understood everything. It will be counted as a defeat. His rival responded to the guy that he was a weakling and that he should always be ready for battle. She added that only those who do not give up and achieve victory even in precarious situations can reach the top, which is exactly what her grandfather said. The guy thought that in fact her grandfather was the king of lightning and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. After all, in reality, anyone who strives to be a hero should really remember this advice, but in fact it didn't apply to him at all. The guy turned his back and said that it looked like he was made of different stuff and that he should just say that she won. The girl also turned her back to him and said that it was some kind of disappointment and that she felt like a fool for having any hopes for him at all. He stopped to say something else. She turned and asked what was it. Then the guy told her not to forget that she promised him dessert on their first date. He said that he would wait. These words made the girl very happy. She laughed and her mood improved. The next fight was announced. It was between Song Chun-ha, who was supposed to fight Yang Chi-hyun. The guy said that if she was from the base tower, then she was lucky with her opponent. The girl asked if she was ready. Her caller was a little confused. Well, at that moment Dana gave the command to start and Song Chun-hee was the first to attack. Her first attack brought her 100% result and her opponent was left with nothing. The guys started discussing among themselves that it looked like he was badly burned and he couldn't do anything about it. Even one of them told Kim Ho it was good that he gave up before he was fried like that. The girl looked at him, turning her head. She wanted to show him what would happen to him. The guys noticed her gaze and started telling each other that she looked at them. It was clear that she was like the Lightning King and she had the same brilliant entrance from the very beginning. He also heard that he was called a coward because he was put up against Song Chuanza, and other guys thought that his victory over Hong Yonghua was just luck and that he was most likely just a coward. The guy didn't understand whether they were really calling him a coward who was lucky enough to remove the lower back of the Ruby Tower. This was exactly the kind of reputation he was counting on. The next fight of Song Chun-hai was announced. They looked forward to the fight and thought about who was unlucky enough to go against her. Her new companion was Seo Yain, the same girl who slept the whole time they were driving to the academy. At that moment, they saw that she had a gun in her hands. She was the shooter. This was unexpected for them. In fact, it stopped becoming more interesting and the firearm was good against the magicians. This time Song Chun-ha will lose. The guy said that they don't know the end of the fight. They can only sit and watch, but if she learned the basics, it will be difficult for her to lose. An argument arose between the guys. Kim Ho said that he was ready to bet 5 silver coins to Sun Chun-hai, and his new friend said that he was also ready to make a bet and he would support the second player. After the first attack, the score was tied and each of the girls received 100 points. It was unexpected to see how someone holding huge pistols in both hands would fight against a magician. At that moment, the command to begin sounded. So Yain immediately reacted and was the first to attack, releasing several magic bullets. When her bullet was almost at its target, she put up a protective field against it, which they resisted. It was already clear that this protective field blocked all the bullets fired by her opponent. The guy thought everything happened as he expected, but she blocked everything at the last moment. It was a death sentence that Song Chunhai had a large mana reserve. Even an rank hummingbird looked like a drank in her hands. But Nice wasn't going to stop. She continued to attack and fired several more bullets in her direction. At that moment she was also attacked with the help of a hummingbird. The girl managed to dodge this attack to the side. In fact, there were two fairly strong opponents, but one of them was a little stronger. So she released the hummingbird again towards her opponent from several sides to make sure. And the calculation was accurate. She was able to hit her opponent with her attack. It seemed a little more and achieved her goal. Well, in fact, the blow passed through the Sapu only tangentially and practically did not touch the enemy and did not cause any damage. The guys were shocked. If the blow hadn't gone through the dog, the touch fight would have been over, and they were also surprised that she dodged, but her movements were still slow. It was clear as soon as lightning struck her that the next blow would be guaranteed to hit the target, and as he had predicted, Song Chunhai would easily win this fight. The enemy lying on the ground used her last strength to open her pocket and take out a grenade. The very next moment she threw this grenade towards her opponent. Song Chunhai felt like she froze at that moment and didn't understand what to do next. The guy was a little surprised because it was a house grenade. It was a great move and regular bombs wouldn't have done any damage anyway. It was clear that now everything would go a little differently. This is where the full power of the Strelkov is revealed. That's exactly what happened after a smoke grenade exploded near her and enveloped her in smoke. She received a powerful blow to the back, after which she did not know what to do next. Song Chunhai thought she had managed to avoid a direct hit with the help of a magical barrier, but the force of the blow was still strong enough to make her lose her balance. She understood that at this rate the situation would quickly become dangerous for her and she could lose. The guy who watched this fight said that he didn't even think about the fact that he was a new student who was so rich. And no one would have thought that she would use those invisible ones herself. In the process she switched to a rifle, and that was also a good idea. After which she fired but missed the target. Song Chunhai was able to dodge the bullet. The score was almost equal and they had 2 minutes 13 seconds left, so Yane was a little closer to victory. At that moment Song Chunha thought that she couldn't stand on the defensive like that all the time. Her opponent was about to attack again and something had to be done as soon as possible. That's not why the girl said she had to understand the trajectory of the magic bullets so she could defuse them. Almost when the magical field reached the target and was near her protective field, she realized that the very moment had come. It was at that moment that she decided that she needed to attack. That was the only way she could defeat her opponent. The very next moment she carried out an attack on the enemy, so that she did not have time to react to it. Well, her opponent understood the plan and at the last moment jumped high so that the attack did not reach its target. But Song Chunhai at that moment realized that her opponent had been caught and she would no longer be able to escape. She thought that she couldn't dodge this attack. It was in the last seconds. It turned out that her opponent didn't have time to dodge and received damage, thanks to which Song Chunhai was able to win this fight. Everything was decided at the last second. So Yane was lying on the ground. She was motionless. She lost this fight. The guy thought that he had assumed that he had bet on the right favorite. At that moment Song Chunhai looked around and thought that it seemed like she had no competition among the newcomers. This was another victory for her. The guy thought about what her opponent had done to her until the very end, and it was impressive. The argument between the guys was over and his new friend had to give up 5 silver coins. Well, after he gave it to them, he said, why don't they make another bet with the same conditions? They should watch 3 more fights. The guy didn't understand, because once was enough. Why else would they tell him that when he sees everything for himself he will change his mind the next time? Go Hyun-woo and obtaining the King of Fists Cho-baek, who seemed many times larger than him and much more experienced. The guy asked Kim Ho who to bet on this time, and he replied that the King of Fists disciple would most likely win this fight. Then I had no choice but to put it on the other side and said how ashamed he was not to believe his friend. Kim Ho replied that they were only talking about him. He never said that Go Hyun-woo would lose. Then the guy asked again what he meant. At that moment Go Hyun-woo looked around and saw Kim Ho. He was very happy that he was there watching this fight. After all, in fact, the mind wanted to show him its victory in this battle, but it will not be as easy as he would like. He said maybe he can get the ball that is behind his back. Well, the guy replied that unfortunately at the moment it was not the right time. Then the opponent said that it was a pity. But the King of Fist Fighting said that even so he would not give in to him and took a stance. Go Hyun-woo to his opponent so that he could show what he could do. After a while the command to start was given and the boys rushed at each other. Each of them tried to attack first in order to inflict immediate damage on their opponent with the first blow. As I expected from the disciple of the King of Fists, His movements were flawless, and he tried to strike instantly. But he didn't expect that his opponent would be able to block these attacks and he wouldn't be able to hit him with runes. After the first attack, they dispersed in different directions in order to concentrate and continue the attack. Go Hyunwoo thought that even though he had neutralized some of the force of the blow, it was still sent some distance away, and he could assume that simple attacks would work. In that case, he decided that he would finish this fight with one blow of this technique. This blow with which he decided to end the fight was called a pure flow. He used it against the disciple of the King of Fists, who was very close and ready to strike. This guy's blow was so strong that he was able to break the sword that was in Go Hyunwoo's hands. That's why he thought that he couldn't continue the fight. He held the broken sword in his hands. He understood that he had lost. The disciple of the King of Fist Fighting said that then he would wait for their next fight, which was Go Hyunwoo's defeat. At that moment, the guy thought that, as he expected, the iron sword couldn't withstand such a force. Apparently, he actually saw this on the train and he had a little hope, but as expected, he uses cutting swords as consumables. His new friend at that moment exclaimed, "No, this can't be." He didn't understand how his new comrade could predict such a thing. At that moment, Kim Ho put Urga on his shoulder and told him that he was talking too much. And what else did he tell him? That he owes him 5 silver coins. The guy said that he doesn't have any money right now, so he'll pay him back later. Kim Ho told him that he could take it without cash. The guy was surprised and asked what he needed. Then he said that he could pay here with the information he had and pointed to the phone. In the dungeon, there was supposed to be a break after lunch. After lunch, everyone had to gather near the entrance to the dungeon building and not be late. They were allowed to rest for a while. The guy, while taking a bite of his sandwich, asked Kim Ho what information he needed, to which he replied that he should finish his food first and then speak. After he finished his sandwich, he asked again what information he needed. Kim Ho replied that he needed to be told about talented students and the 4 main factions. In the Dragon Slayer Academy, in addition to official groups like the Disciplinary Committee, there were 4 major factions: the Murim Alliance, the Guild Federation, the Magic Tower Society, and the Knight Order. Among them were all the outstanding talents of each faction. This is the grandson of the Holy Sword Moon Henson. He belonged to the Murim Alliance, and his name was Moon Yoon. The supposed next head of the Ruby Magic Tower was a member of the Magic Tower Society, and her name was Hong Yanawa. Next up was the Guild Federation, which is Troit leaving with a cat on its shoulder. Park Nari is another promising talent who doesn't stand out because he hides his skills. There was also a sword master who belonged to the Knightly Order, and his name was Di Songhyun. The guy said these were the ones he would call uniquely strong. It was a pretty good lineup. At that moment, he looked around and asked where Go Hyunwoo had disappeared to. I looked around and he said that yes, that's right, there is also a club president. He completely forgot about him. After which he decided to quickly run away since he needed to come to the platform. He said that they would see each other again. After some time, they were left alone. He didn't even know how or what to talk to her about. He thought maybe because she was his first acquaintance in this world, he couldn't just leave her in such a depressed state. He said to her, "Remember, I dropped a cookie on the train yesterday." The girl looked at him and didn't understand what he was talking about. After which he continued to talk about how Song Chunhai sent him dessert because it was his cookie, and he thought it was right to share it with her. He handed the girl dessert and told her to join him. The girl thanked him. Even though they ate this dessert together, her mood still didn't improve. For a moment she looked at him and asked him why he thought she lost that fight to Song Chunhai. The guy replied that at this level it was difficult to overcome the magical barrier with magic bullets, and given her superior magical power, it was no wonder that she was so strong. But if she strengthens the magical field with her mana training, it will be a completely different story. The girl asked him again why she needed mana training. Then he said just let her not say that she hadn't trained before she said no. He didn't understand then how she was able to create a magic bullet. The girl didn't know what to answer him. Kim Ho looked at the girl and asked if this was true, and she shouldn't tell him that she didn't study the mana bullet skill. The girl answered that she didn't study anything at all. Then he thought that she was most likely an ordinary genius because the skill of mana bullets is considered basic for a shooter. He looked at her and wondered if she really shot on instinct and hit the target. Just think about it, it caused so many problems for Song Chun. I don't even train. The guy thought that this was a kissing situation, after which he said if she didn't mind he could spend some time to help her. Kim Ho then told her that when she starts training her mana and learning her skills, everything will go a little easier, and even so she was doing quite well. They had to go because it was time for Reed to go to the dungeon. They went down to the dungeon hall. The leader said that now that everyone was in this place, he would explain the next stage of their lesson. after which he said that the classes would take place in the dungeon that was behind the portal behind him, and he also added that the dungeon had its own rules. The first rule was the score. You need to constantly monitor the time every monster killed during these 10 minutes will be credited to their account. Their goal is to destroy as many expensive monsters as possible. The second rule is a fixed zone. In short, in this zone all their equipment skills and traits are set to rank F. He also added that it's not just his core that will fall to this rank but everyone else as well, so they should be careful. If they are careless with their mana spending they will regret it. The leader said that he would call the students one by one. In a few minutes several students were lying on the ground. He wondered if this was really serious and that it was so weak. It was a disgrace. I looked at my students and realized that the only ones who tried were a guy and a girl. He looked at the guy and girl from the disciplinary department and thought that only these two. Just thinking about training these rams made his head hurt a little. So he shouted for the next ones to join the fight, and they were So Yane and Kim Ho. The guy here advised his partner that for this test they should use a rifle, and she agreed with him. He told her that if she started having problems with mana control she should just shoot anyone who got too close in the head, and she agreed. After which he smiled, looked at her again, said that they would see each other again, and got ready to begin. A few seconds later a sign appeared saying entrance to a fixed zone. When he entered he thought that he hadn't been here for a long time. The first thing he needed to do was to find out where she was, so he focused on that and decided it was time for him to stretch. It seemed like he had 10 minutes left. He got ready and pumped up his abilities. When he heard the command, monsters that were waiting for the battle to begin attacked him from behind. The guy was prepared for this turn of events, so he turned around and threw the monster back with his staff. He understood that at first it seemed that in the foggy forest monsters appeared in a random place immediately after entering the dungeon. Well, in fact there are losses of their appearance, so the goblin appeared from there, which means this is the third pattern. Kim Ho took out the dagger he had in reserve and thought that in this case the majority of monsters would be in that place. After which he swung and threw, aiming exactly in the direction where the monster should have been concentrated. And he was not mistaken, one of those monsters was really there, and the guy's dagger hit him right in the eye. At that moment the guy thought that it seemed like the staff would no longer be useful to him. He needed to change his weapon. He also realized that there were weapons lying around everywhere in this place. He picked up a huge axe. He simply borrowed it from the orcs or goblins. The only thing he knew for sure was that the points wouldn't work on their own, and he needed to complete the mission. That's why he decided not to waste time and destroy the first monster that was in front of him. The scoreboard showed that there were 7 minutes and 2 seconds left, and several more monsters were approaching him. The guy thought that 2 trolls were coming from behind, so he understood that it was better for him not to save this recording. He decided that if the death of the monsters coincided with his movements then people might misunderstand it, and it would be better to delete the recording right at that moment. He looked at the scoreboard and saw that his current score was 683 points. In 3 minutes he decided that he had farmed a little. Well, he also thought that usually the task was already completed. His task was to get average results on the exam and win at least one duel, then he would take the top 50% in the ranking in the dungeon. His reward was copying the skill cell. He understood that if he got a higher score he would attract unnecessary attention to himself. He decided that for now it was enough and it was time for him to go out. The very next moment he stood up and went out and saw that his partner was also outside. He looked at her and realized that her time was up. She scored 781 points and was in the top 21%. The guy asked the girl what it was like down there, and she replied that it was very difficult. After which he told her that her account was quite good. The manager thought that this guy who became involved in a duel did not last up to 10 minutes. I am sure he ran away again. The leader thought that with such a fight he was determined and really thought he could kill dragons, but when he saw the result, he was very surprised because he had an average high result in such a short time. He didn't understand that this had ever happened before. So the manager decided to remember his name and thought it would be better to keep an eye on him. The next one who was supposed to start the task was Go Hyun-woo. He went to start and told his comrades that he would return. The guy looked at the table and saw that first place was occupied by Lee Sung-hyun. He was the grandson of the sword master, and third place was Moon Yoon. He was the grandson of the Holy Sword. He thought that if the best talents are at Han Somi's level, then Go Hyun-woo also has a chance. The guy thought that as he expected, Go Hyun-woo had already taken first place and pushed everyone else aside. When he came out of the dungeon, everyone said that it was the same type of duel. Another said that he knew that he was strong, but no one understood how it was possible to score 1,000 points. Kim Ho met his friend and said that it was a good job. Go Hyun-woo told him that it was all thanks to him, and then he added that he thought he did so well only because he let him rest after the duel. Kim Ho replied that his friend seemed to be somewhat exaggerating his role. The other guys were discussing with you what's wrong with this guy. Even a coward can now take high positions. They thought he gave up right after the first fight. These words made Go Hyun-woo very angry and she wanted to react, but Kim Ho stopped him and told him to forget. Go Hyun-woo didn't understand how he could act so calmly, but the guy said that he didn't care and he shouldn't worry. Then Go Hyun-woo told him that if it was his decision he would carry it out. And they looked at the table and said that it seemed like everyone had passed the tests, but then they noticed that Song-chun, he was not on the table. Then he thought that it seemed like this was not the end yet and the result in the table could still change. When Song-chun-hai descended into the dungeon, she stood alone. There were monsters around her, and she only thought about how many of them there were. The only thought that was in her head was why exactly so many monsters were chasing her. She was walking last and expected that these monsters would weaken, but they only slowed down a little, and that's all. Then she remembered the guy's words. He said that if problems with mana control begin, you just need to shoot in the head anyone who comes too close. She decided that if she thought about it, she didn't want to admit it, but what he said stuck in his head given the limited mana and the ceiling on area effect spell damage. This means she needed to direct the mana to one point. She used the force of lightning, after which she swung and delivered a heavy blow to one point. Everyone was watching her result. Her time was up. She scored only 571 points and was in the top 47%. When the girl came out, she was very upset. She wondered why the rating was put on public display. After all, she couldn't even call her score good, and she was ashamed. At that moment, the supervisor said that their selection exam was over and the results would be available the next day, so they should rest and this should not affect their classes. After which he turned his back on the students and said that they were free to go. The manager knocked on the door of the office and was told that he could come in and inquire about his appointment. The group leader said that he wants to review the recording of Kim Ho from Class 13's selection exam. The boy said that this is the first time the leader has shown interest in a student. The manager said that it was not important at all and he just needed to show him the recording. The guy replied that of course he would just find it. Then he started looking for it and saw that the recording was not saved and it could not be viewed. The manager asked if that meant there were no recordings. The guy replied that it wasn't quite like that, they could check the dungeon logs, after which he was very surprised. At that moment, the manager thought that as he had anticipated, this guy had deliberately deleted the recording. The manager understood that if he continued at this pace, he would easily overcome 2,000 points in 10 minutes. Why hide his skills? This was the only thing he did not understand. In fact, the Dragon Slayers have many allies and enemies, and one of them was the Dragon Servants, the apostles of the evil god. The leader thought that if someone from Nick penetrated the academy, the manager thought it would be wise to take immediate countermeasures. The guy, seeing his condition, said he could notify the rector. Hand brought him the answer. He replied that no, it's better to watch a little longer. If the information is floating until they receive clear evidence, he'll only hide better. At that moment he thought that if this guy was not really up to no good, then he would soon show himself and he would just continue to watch. He needed to understand who Kim Ho was, why he was acting like this, and what it all meant. 1527 Dragon Slayer Academy Cafeteria. Kim Ho ordered a cup of coffee for himself. His new friend Go Hyun-woo said that this coffee also interested him. The girl who was with them said that she would return to her place, and the guys added that they would then drink everything themselves. While they were drinking coffee, they decided to take out the catalog to see what they had received after their recent classes. When Go Hyun-woo saw what was written there, he said that most of it was nonsense. Kim Ho then told him that that was why he suggested having a glass of coffee. They needed to sort out important things. The guy told his friend to first take out his student ID card. When he looked, he saw some glasses, and it was something new. Go Hyun-woo said the scoreboard shows the number of available points. Kim Ho said it should be seen as an internal academic currency. And then he added that points are mostly earned through raids in dungeons like their recent descent, and these points can be used to buy items or use institutions, but at the moment their other use is more important. Surely his friend saw the messages about the recording before leaving the dungeon. He confirmed that this is exactly what he remembered. It seems like he agreed to something. Kim Ho explained that such recordings could be purchased, after which he extended his hand where the ball was and said that it was purchased for 100 points. It was also possible to purchase recordings of other students. Go Hyun-woo was surprised when he saw this ball, and said that it was the same recording of Han Somi's passage through the dungeon. I'll explain to Kim Ho that since he took first place his post probably sold out faster than hotcakes. The guy looked and saw that it was truly incredible that he got a lot of points in a short time. Go Hyunwoo said that such a large-scale sale of recordings of his actions is not so good. Kim Ho responded that it is true that people will analyze his fighting style and look for vulnerabilities. He added that he was lucky to have dealt with the fixed zone, but a battle using mana won't quickly understand how weak his core is. Then he added that however, considering the points and the risk, it was worth it because for the points you can use the room and mana training in the training center. Well, the most important thing is that the training hall had a higher mana density than other places, which allowed one to gain strength faster. Go Hyunwoo jumped up from his seat and shouted, "Is there really such a thing here?" The guy replied that of course there was, but there were conditions for entry. Go Hyunwoo said that given everything said earlier, the conditions are Kim Ho points 500 points for 0600 use of the hall. Go Hyunwoo thought for a moment and said that if he goes to this gym once a day, Kim Ho added that his points will run out and he won't be able to spend them on anything else. He was wondering if there was another way. Kim Ho saw that there was a season pass, but he is only given the best in clubs. He will have to take the place of Moon Yoon to get one, and given his current skills this did not seem possible. The guys understood that for now it was better to use the accumulated points. Kim Ho said that he was ready to get him one of these if he promised to do something for him in return. Go Hyunwoo asked Kim Ho what he wanted from him, then, when he became stronger, they would go to a deep dungeon together. It is clear that compared to the misty forests, it could be mortally dangerous there. Kim Ho's new friend, what will he say and will he agree? Go Hyunwoo replied that there would be something, but he always craved power, and if he showed him the way, how can he not put his life on the line? Of course he accepts his offer, and he said yes. Kim Ho said okay, and while he shouldn't be shy about living inside a special training hall, he will get him a season pass within 2 weeks. Go Hyunwoo replied that he is ready to wait that long. Kim Ho thought that while his new friend was getting stronger, it was time for him to make another deal. So he went to workshop number 4 and knocked on the door and entered. When he walked in, a man was sitting on a chair with his back to him and asked who else he was. Kim Ho greeted the elder and said that he came because he was interested in the magical engineering club. The guy replied that if that was the case, then let him go to the first workshop. Why did he come to him? Kim Ho tried to explain to him and went first to the first workshop, and there they sent him to this very room. When I heard about this, he said that it was good that he could take a quick look around and just as quickly disappear and not disturb him. He was very busy. Kim Ho thanked him and said that he would behave very quietly. He watched the guy and realized that this was a magical engineering skill. Everything was the same as in the rank. He extended his hand and used copy. The first target was completed and his new skill was placed in the slot. He decided that now he had to go to the next target, and it had to be somewhere very close. It won't be far at all. He was delighted because he had found his next target. So he looked and told the elder that he found something here. It didn't look too valuable. In his hands was a huge cube. The elder said that it was just a cube. For some unknown reason, it had quite high characteristics and no one could do anything with it. Kim Ho thought it looked interesting. Since he didn't need it, he would take it for himself. However, he would feel like a scoundrel if he took it just like that, so he decided that he needed to buy it or exchange it for something. The guy offered to exchange the catalyst for a cube, but for those involved in magical engineering, there are never too many of those things. The elder agreed this time, but asked that he not tell anyone anything. The boy thanked him. The elder one was happy at that moment because he saved 1,000 points. Kim Ho thought that he was cool. He was a piece of trash for 1,000 points. Of course he was happy. Well, actually it was garbage. I read its characteristics. He needed to uncover the secret of the mysterious cube. The guy raised the issue that this was actually a garbage task, and of course no one would subject themselves to such a hassle. But despite this, the reward for the last task will be an item with the rank of Life Cube. The guy thought he had elevated countless heroes to crank. After some time he was walking in the training center where the mana training hall was located and thought that he knew how to get it without going through the entire chain of quests. He decided that he needed to use his efforts, and this was the skill magical engineering. Look at this again from the cube. He decided that it was time for him to start. When he started spinning this cube, he only had 47 seconds left until the end. He couldn't do anything. He thought that at this rate he was comfortable. 3 days left until the end. His 14 seconds. It should have been highlighted that the effort was completed and the magical engineering skill was downgraded. The guy thought that too few minutes were allocated. With his current level of magic engineering, he can't work with the cube, so while the skill is recovering, he decided to do meditation to improve the core. When the time until the next use of the skill was 0 seconds, he thought that an hour of meditation and only 1 minute of work, then repeat everything again. He used the enhancement skill again. He understood that he had to complete the life cube before Friday because that's exactly what happens on the first Friday. In any case, it was already morning, so it was time for him to get back to his studies. When he came to the auditorium, he met his girlfriend and asked her why she was so early. The girl replied that she got up early. Then he looked around and didn't see his comrade. He wondered if he hadn't arrived yet. The girl looked at the guy, handed him the bag, and told him to take a cookie. He was happy. When he pulled out one cookie that was in the shape of a bear, he thought it was very cool. Go Hyun-woo came up behind them and greeted Kim Ho and So Yain. The guy said that he was a little late and asked how he was enjoying the training room. Go Hyun-woo replied that this was the first time he had felt such a rapid development of his internal strength. A little more effort and he would break through the wall. Kim Ho said that it was good, that he would try to get the seasonal one as soon as possible, and the guy thanked him. At that moment, the leader entered the auditorium and told everyone to quiet down and asked everyone to take their seats. The leader said that before they start classes, they should listen to the announcements. He said that from that day on they would be holding classes at the arena. He then added that the time limit had been increased to 10 minutes, so they had to think through their strategy. All first-year students were required to conduct at least 3 buoys a week. He also announced in advance that 100 points would be deducted from those not participating in the battles. When the guy heard about this, he thought that finally, and this time we intend to win. Kim Ho immediately suggested to his friend that they should go to the arena to buy recordings of the first day's fights, which would sell the best. The girl grabbed his hand and he said that Klim needed to hurry as quickly as possible. The girl looked at him and said that she had free time today. Kim Ho was a little surprised by her conversation. He didn't understand why she was telling him this and what it could even mean. The guy looked at the girl and said that she meant training the bullet mana skill that they discovered yesterday and wanted to train. He was very happy and said that it was good and they could see each other later. Later that same day, a little later, fights were held on arena with the participation of first-year students. Kim Ho and his new friend Go Hyun-woo also headed to the arena to see what was going on. Then they went to Alina and saw 2 guys talking to each other. One of them asked if he knew him. The second said that it was the same one who gave up to avoid a fight with Miss Song. They said that they had already heard everything about this. Coward Go Hyun-woo, when he heard this conversation, said, "How can you say such a thing about a person? Tell him directly." He thought it was some kind of rage, but Kim Ho stopped him and said that there was no need to tell them anything. Kim Ho looked at these guys and said they probably did well in the qualifying battles. In fact, he earned 300 points and they. One of the guys thought, 300 points? Does he really have the same number of points as the coward? When this guy turned around and said to Kim Ho, did he really think he was on the same level as him if he hadn't faced Song Chung-ho in the second round? Kim Ho interrupted him that he remembered him. He was the same boy who was carried away after the lightning strike. When the guy heard his side of the story, insulted him, he couldn't hold back and asked again what he meant. And then he added that he was lucky because they had the same score. Immediately after this, he told him to go down as a coward, and he was ready to show him the abyss in front of them, which he had not yet seen. On the battlefield, I left 2 with me. There was Yang Chi-hong and on the other side Kim Ho. Yan Chi-hong shouted to his opponent that he was ready to finish him off with 1 blow and was already prepared to do so. Kim Ho told him that it was good and he was ready to finish the fight very quickly. The next moment, the signal sounded to start the battle. Yan Chi-hong launched an attack. Him, as I heard exactly in a few seconds, was right before Kim Ho's eyes. It seemed that he had already won. Not so, and no. Kim Ho wondered what kind of person you must be to fall for the same trick twice. He was paralyzed. Kim Ho apologized and said that he wouldn't be able to finish it. It would be clean like Song Chun-hai. His opponent couldn't do anything about it. He tried to say something, but everything is useless. The very next moment, it was clear that Kim Ho had won. That's what was shown on the scoreboard. The guy laughed and said, could a coward really have won? His opponent got a few bumps on his head and said that he was just made to feel bad, and if they fought again he would win the fight. Kim Ho asked him if he thought it was true and offered to fight him again. If that's what he really wanted, then he decided that this time it would be completely different. Well, everything happened again. Kim Ho asked him, is he really not learning anything at all? His opponent barely raised his head and said that next time he would definitely win and asked to fight him again. Kim Ho told him that he was an idiot and that was probably enough. and then he added that he was a little tired and decided to end it for today. Kim Ho thought he still had to fight 3 times, but he had to pretend he didn't want to. He looked at his opponent and said, well, if he really wants to, he can teach him a little, but before that, he asked him for tuition fees. The guy was furious and didn't understand why he was acting like that with him. But despite this, he handed him a spiritual pill that was made by his family. The guy thought that this was not bad at all. Kim Ho said that you have one more word he should not write down or talk about this fight. His opponent agreed, since it would be better for him too if no one knew about it. Kim Ho looked at his opponent and said, well, since he got his pay, he will fight him until he is satisfied. And another fight, and the result was the same. Kim Ho told him that this should be enough, and in fact it was a good job. His opponent asked him to wait until I got to my feet and said he wanted to apologize for his rudeness. So he said that he judged too hastily and one-sidedly, and Kim Ho is not a coward. To which Kim Ho replied that no, he'd better continue pretending that he was a coward. The guy didn't understand why he needed it. Well, he decided that he would agree to the knives and not ask why, because he understood that he was not the only victim. Kim Ho approached his new friend and asked how he was since he had already finished. He replied that he had 2 wins. He needs to finish the 3rd fight, so Kim Ho can go ahead. Guy, I'll live for him. Good luck. As soon as he left the battlefield, he went to his new friend's training room. He saw her and apologized for making her wait. Kim Ho looked at his daughter-in-law and said that he was ready to begin the first special lecture regarding mana bullets. He looked and said that they need to start over with making bullets. He wants to see how she does it. When he saw this, he thought that this girl was simply amazing, and how could she even lose to Song Chun? He with such a piece of mana. Paulina said he wanted to talk to her about distributing the first shaft to use the appropriate amount of mass shot. After which she went to begin her fight against her opponent Guang Jichel. The guy thought that he could then use the terrain or to take cover, as she would not be able to check every hall here. In fact, her opponent was clearly visible to her eyes, and she understood that this abnormal flow of her mother between the hills. The guy thought that even if she destroyed all the hills, she wouldn't be able to break through his barrier. He decided that the arrow that couldn't break through Sun Chuan's barrier wasn't afraid at all. But what a surprise it was when his barrier to the quest was broken through with the very first blow. As soon as she took aim and pointed her machine gun, she immediately determined where it was. And it was no trouble for her to shoot the guy's rights. He was outraged by this. He had won, and it was already night outside. The manager looked at Kim Ho's fight and thought that the caliber's movements were not unusual, and her control was at its peak. The same thing happened in the second fight. It seemed like Lembo was literally toying with his opponent. When he looked at it again, he thought that this wasn't all that interested him. He also noticed Xiao Yan's qualifying exam. Back then her bullet was just a piece of mana. This time it was already a mana bullet in perfect form. He did not understand whether a person could change so quickly in just 2 days. He looked at their conversation where the guy said that the girl meant training the mana bullet skill that they discussed. He thought that it was the same guy again. He was even more interested in the question of Kim Ho, who he really was. You even had a guy sitting in one of the rooms and continuing to assemble that same cube. After some time he thought that it was ready, and finally he managed to assemble it. It was a life cube that enhanced the objects placed inside with the help of the life element. Thanks to the increase in the level of the enhancement skill, he was able to finish on time, and by meditating in this place he raised his core rank to level D. The drain on man while using the spell was simply devastating. He could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He had to thank for the spiritual pill. He was now all set. So it was time to spread the word. At that moment he saw the druid and thought how lucky he was to run into her. It was a talented druid from the nature club of the guild unification. Her name was Pak Nari. He thought that she should forgive him for bothering him, but he needed her help. Animals are usually more sensitive to natural energy, and no animal will pass by such a thing without reacting. Pak Nari was very surprised that her tiger cub Buma behaved like that. The guy thought that everything was going great, just as he thought. Pak Nari apologized to the guy, said that she would pick him up now, and began calling her pet to come out of this cube. When she came closer, the guy realized that she felt the energy of nature as expected from a druid. It was time for him to play his role. The guy told her that he was in a bit of a hurry and asked her to put her pet away. The girl said that he had never behaved like this before. After she pulled out her pet, she asked Kim Ho 3rd grade. He replied that yes. Then she turned around and said that everything was clear and wished him luck. The guy thought that it should be enough that the Nature Club found out about the Cube of Life. He decided that now getting a season pass would be easy as pie. He also thought that finally there would be interesting events in the next lecture. The teacher said that they would encounter this in a variety of places, with a good example being the clash between the sword master and the goblin champion. He sat and listened to her very attentively, but in his head he was thinking about only one thing. There was only 1 minute left before the lunch break. At that moment she said that the class was over and there were 32 seconds left. When the bell rang, everyone thought that the grinding was finally over and they could rest a little. Imagine their surprise when they saw a red fireball where the teacher stood. They wondered what the hell it was. The next moment, the energy emitted by this red ball filled the entire auditorium. The couples did not look at their limbs and did not understand what had happened. One of the guys with a number 1 on his forehead wondered what kind of ball it was and whether some barrier had scared his daughter. The guy looked at his partner and asked what number he had. Nabu then turned the other way and saw the same number on everyone else. It was a surprise inspection at the Dragon Slayer Academy. A check for prohibited items was underway. It was a wave of prohibition. A magnetic field that detects the presence of prohibited substances deemed unlawful for a student is added to the list of prohibited items. The purpose of the wave of bans is to detect contraband items. Kim Ho thought that it seemed like the sounds were too loud. Maybe it was Cho Baek showing off. Go Hyun-woo at that moment told his friend that maybe they should watch. Kim Ho thought that these two had nothing anyway. Well, he also understood that the guy who was sitting in front of him would have problems with him, and this guy really didn't understand what kind of notification it was. Kim Ho approached him and asked if the club leader hadn't warned him about the inspection that day. The guy said that well yes, but he wasn't told that it would be like this. The guy didn't understand what to do, and if they found all this that he had, the leader would kill him. Kim Ho smiled and asked him if he could help him. The guy asked if he could really do anything. Kim Ho turned around and started to leave. He said if he doesn't want to be here, he can act as he knows. The guy grabbed his hand and said that he would be grateful if he could help him. Kim Ho looked at him and said well then he will have to. The guy lowered his head and said that he understood the abuse. Kim Ho pulled out his cube and told the guy to put all his forbidden things in it. He should put only rare and compact things in it. The guy asked what would happen if they were put in this cube. Kim Ho said that they didn't have time to talk, he just needed to put all the forbidden stuff in there. The guy was worried. He understood that they were already approaching and would soon be near his place, so he decided to put everything in a cube. A disciplinary squad entered the room, and as always the squad leader shouted for everyone to freeze. Song Chun-hai is 3 years old. These two are sitting under the table. What are they doing there? Kim Ho got out of the setup. I said that it wasn't easy to relax there. She didn't believe them. Then the second guy started explaining that they were just waiting out the break, and the girl told him to hand over all the forbidden things he had. The girl said she didn't know how he slipped through the wave of prohibition, but it was time to confess everything. No tricks would work near this crystal ball. Kim Ho also thought about it at that moment, but no one could even imagine that he wouldn't see anything this couldn't be. Kim Ho saw that the ball wasn't responding and said that in that case he could leave. The girl ordered him to sit down in his place. Kim Ho thought that this was exactly why he had found it necessary to finish this cube by Friday. At that moment he saw an item that gives them immunity to the ban wave, and everyone who realizes its true value is ready to kill just to get their hands on it. He thought it was time to make an exchange. The guy he helped said that he was very grateful to him, and without him he would have gone on a direct flight to slavery or would have been lying dead somewhere on the beach. Kim Ho then told him that he would still apply for payment of the debt. The guy answered him that of course he never forgets his debts. Kim Ho-da suggested to him that we take the forbidden to his club room. The guy agreed and said that their leader wanted to meet him anyway. Here is the smuggling trade before the establishment of chaos. The villain of the Dragon Slayer Academy was a thieves' club. The guy walked into the room and turned to the boss. He said that they were back. He hit the guy and said that he was told to get rid of all the prohibited items for this week. He yelled at the guy and then hit him, and I repeat again that he did not follow his orders. After which he hit him several more times while he said that it was very important for them. The guy asked for forgiveness and said that it was enough to hit him. Kim Ho at that moment looked at the boss and greeted her. He introduced himself. The boss was a girl. Her name was Dan Gwen. Yana said that he could already guess that she was the head of the club. The girl also said that she heard about everything that happened this time and the item that allows you to bypass the wave of prohibition. She wanted to see it. When she saw this cube, she was delighted and didn't hide it. To be honest, she didn't believe it until she saw it herself. She didn't even believe that there was something capable of deceiving the wave of prohibition, and if she could get away with it, she would have already stolen such a thing. Kim Ho said that if he did this, she would be caught immediately. The girl was surprised. Then he tried to explain that something was telling him that the head of the Thieves' Club knew about the disappointments against theft, and she asked him again if this was really a magitechnological item. The girl thought for a moment and then added that in any case he came to her in search of something. Kim Ho answered her that he knew that she would immediately understand. The head of the club pointed around and said that he could look, but they were actually poor and didn't have much to offer. Kim Ho looked at her and said that it was okay, she would handle his request. She wanted to know what it was. Kim Ho immediately told her that he wanted to get into the temporary warehouse, which was surprising to her. She then decided to find out who he really was if he had such a request. A temporary warehouse is a room where ordinary things discovered during a wave of bands are stored. They are studied on weekends before they disappear into some secret storage facility whose location no one knows. Kim Ho said that he assumed it would happen at night, the latest tomorrow. The girl wanted to know his disciplinary committee sent. Kim Ho was very surprised and said of course not, he was not friends with them at all. He tried to explain that there was something he really needed. The boss of this club thanked him again for his help, but she couldn't do it for free. She worked too hard to give it away for free. Kim Ho's warehouse is guarded by the disciplinary committee, and it won't be easy to get in, and it won't be easy to get out either. Kim Ho offered her his guarantee that she would get out of there safe, and whether that would be enough in exchange for a ticket. She thought that if they dragged something big out of this place, Kim Ho explained to her that they would come out of there with a big bush and without a trace. He was absolutely sure that she should not refuse under any circumstances, so he asked her again if she was ready. When night fell, the entire club gathered on the site in anticipation of the upcoming event. The leader of this club asked everyone here again. She wanted to make sure that they were all gathered. They told her that yes, everyone had gathered, but everyone was interested in who the guy was who was with her. The club leader said that they had hired another person to help with this matter and asked everyone to introduce themselves. Many of the guys were more surprised. They thought it was completely abnormal that a newbie would be taken on such an important task. Others approached him to get to know him. He understood that he just needed to ignore some of them and just take care of the task. The leader of this club said that there was 1 minute left, so she assigned one person to stay outside for support and the rest had to go with her. The leader told Kim Ho that he should be careful and not stand out too much. When he was inside, he should focus on taking Milky and valuables no matter what. The guy heard all her instructions and said that he understood everything and he was ready to go. After which the girl said it was time to work and her whole group quickly followed her. Kim Ho thought he heard the footsteps of thieves. It was Brang, since the magic club was ready for him while magic and engineering were unnecessary. Moving along with them, he felt that the thieves' steps were becoming faster and quieter. They approached the building and saw one of the representatives of the plenary team listening to music. I expected for myself that he saw a butterfly that landed on his shoulder. He wondered why the butterfly suddenly appeared in the middle of the night. But the next moment he felt the shadow butterflies burst and he didn't understand what was happening. But it was too late. He was twisted or lying on the ground and could not move. I climbed up to the 3rd floor of the old school building. Kim Ho thought about how tired he was and how many guard spells they had cast. And another representative from the disciplinary team was standing guard in the corridor. He was scared and didn't understand who was approaching him. This guy tried to stop them and said that Naru was there, but all his words were useless. In the next few moments he was immobilized from all sides and he still tried to resist. Well, he was told that there was no need to do stupid things. Resistance would only tire them both out. After these words he stopped resisting. The leader of this group said that there was a temporary warehouse right around the corner and she ordered them to stop and check the situation and only then go in. After which she took out the magical object and wanted to understand what was there. The girl was a little upset because she considered it a bad sign that of all the possible options the guy with the axe was the one who was holding it. It was too heavy for her. Kim Ho thought that it was a 3rd-year student with an A rank and in his hands was a hellish axe. His name was Dong Gwen. It really would be difficult. He just wanted to walk quietly with them, but it seems he will have to lend a helping hand. Kim Ho told the leader that she most likely knows how to use the shadow butterfly dream, but she was surprised how he knew about it. Kim Ho wanted to know if she knew or not, and he would explain everything later. She said that she knew, but her skill was low, only rank C. Kim Ho then said that this would be enough. He applied the rank increase and the duration was 1 minute 59 seconds. The leader didn't understand how he did it. Then the guy said that there was no time and they needed to hurry. The leader looked at him again and thought, who is he and why does he have so many skills? In fact, the dream of butterflies that he asked for was one of the skills that not everyone possessed. When the guy from the disciplinary squad saw this attack, he thought that it was a curse and there were violators again. He tried to attack the butterflies that were around and even split several of them in half. Well, there were so many butterflies that he couldn't handle them all. It seemed like they were only increasing in number. At some point, when there were too many butterflies, an emission occurred and the butterflies had to do their job. It was necessary to neutralize the heavy weight with skills alone. They wrapped themselves around this guard and made a cocoon out of him. The leader turned and looked at the guy. I said that they would talk to him and then first they needed to finish the job. After which she hurried and told everyone else that they should grab the whole price and get out of here. The guys agreed with him. When Kim Ho entered, he thought that he would also go and check out the assortment. He needed to see everything that was there. He thought that often in the Dragon Slayer Academy things are blacklisted because of their effects. If an item causes physical elemental damage, it is considered prohibited. Among all the forbidden things, he looks for things with elemental side effects. With his crank resistance, he will simply ignore the side effect. Kim Ho thought that he had enough things. It was time to look for a skill book, especially since most of the skills that use elemental damage are quite good from the boxes, and thought that maybe it would be useful. He was surprised because it was unexpected in Nakotka. He didn't have any combat skills anyway, just in case he decided to learn this skill here and now. At that moment, one of the representatives of the disciplinary committee came in and asked why they were trying so hard in the middle of the night. Just recently, third-year student of Dragon Slayer Academy Student Council President Song Chin-gue, along with the head of the disciplinary committee, said that Dan Gwen is stealing. The leader looked at him and replied that the wind had carried the Honorable Student Council President to help with the duties of the disciplinary committee. The Student Council President said that enough talk and that they should put down their weapons and obediently follow him to the disciplinary committee office. The girl thought the more they dragged it out, the more unpleasant this situation became for them, which meant they needed to act. And she raised her hand to us and shouted it's time for the kids to get going so that everyone else could hear her. She used one of her main skills, the Shadow Sanctuary. It creates a shadow rift and makes the day ally inside, hiding them for a certain period. Within seconds, the student council chairman and the head of the disciplinary committee were standing alone. One of them said that the violators had left the temporary storage facility, and he ordered that no one be missed. Kim Ho ran very quickly down the long corridor. His main goal was to avoid being caught. After running for some time, he saw a pillar of fire that flew right in front of his face. At the last moment, he was able to return from it without being hit or damaged. When the head of the disciplinary committee saw this, she said that he was very good if he was able to dodge it. The guy didn't understand when he managed to get to this place. Then the head of the disciplinary committee said that he knew everyone in the club quite well, but they would see him for the first time. He believed that the guy was a new student. Kim Ho didn't answer his question. The head of the disciplinary committee said that he even hides his voice, which is very clever. And this in turn only meant that he was not going to give up, and at that moment several sharp stones came out around him. Kim Ho had no choice but to use another of his skills and tried to direct it towards the disciplinary committee. When he saw that a hummingbird was pointing in his direction, he was surprised, but he decided that he would not give up this time. And he sent a multitude of horses at this guy that were supposed to cause him damage. But nothing came of it, and the disciplinary committee thought that he had never seen such control over this laptop. If he hadn't invested in protective magic, he would have been lying paralyzed. The head of the disciplinary committee said he was good for a rookie. Kim Ho wasn't going to stop. He pushed forward. Well, I took a few steps forward and he realized that he couldn't move any further. He didn't understand what to do. He was under fire from all sides, and if he took even one step, he would be destroyed. The head of the disciplinary committee said that he would not have a second chance. Then he raised his head and said that it was time to end this. He was simply furious. After which he sent a lot of outfits towards the guy that were supposed to damage him and destroy him. The head of the disciplinary committee thought that this guy was very arrogant and that he was behaving in an equally arrogant manner. He also thought that no one had ever been able to withstand such an attack, but he suddenly caught himself but the thoughts that he did not understand what this heat was. At that moment he raised his head and looked and saw that everything around was burning. He wondered if this was all the work of this guy. When the head of the disciplinary committee saw this, he thought that this was definitely a forbidden skill and that he was really crazy to use it. Kim Ho decided he had no choice but to use his fire fist to stop the head of the disciplinary committee. It was an info fist with which he was able to smash everything around and turn it into a continuous flame. Kim Ho tried to do it. He thought that this skill was harder to use than he thought. Regulating power is not such a simple matter. There were no serious injuries, so the school won't be involved. but the Emerald Magic Tower Group Disciplinary Committee will definitely make its move. Kim Ho only thought about the fact that they were all trying to find out his identity, not that they would be able to find him. At that moment, he heard voices shouting for everyone to gather and go there because they heard an explosion from that direction. Kim Ho thought that he needed to get out before he was caught, and several more representatives from the disciplinary committee went up to the floor and started shouting to their superior that he needed to be taken to the medical room quickly. After some time in the office with the student council in the truth room, the leader of the group did not understand how much longer I would not keep her there. She just counted that they should reprimand her and let her go. The head of the student council said that this was the end of the bots thief. He was leaving. All these frogs were tiring him out. The head of the disciplinary committee told her if she wanted this to end quickly, why not cooperate with him? And he barely held out the paper. The girl looked and asked what it was she was thinking about. That the guy who came to her identified us, collected a lot of good and compact counter. The head of the disciplinary committee approached her and asked if she understood what was happening. He didn't understand how they had managed to pull this off, but a lot of things had gone missing. The girl looked at all this, shrugged her shoulders, and said that she was hearing about this for the first time. The head of the disciplinary committee asked, is she really going to play the fool? She said that she would take responsibility, but nothing more than that. That's exactly what everyone expected from her. The head of the disciplinary committee said that her punishment would begin tomorrow. She smiled, walked out, and said that she was leaving. The rest of her friends were waiting in another room. They wanted to know if she was okay. The girl said that everything was fine and everyone was fine. They would discuss the details in the club room. She was also surprised why there were only 4 in this room. She wanted to know where the other one was. She looked at the dream and said, is it really going to play at being innocent until the end? And how shameful. The leader of the group said, what is this sudden hostility? Sun then came and said that a member of her club used the Fist of Inferno and their leader is now in Lazarus. The leader of the group was very surprised and could not even imagine that someone was in the infirmary. She thought that this guy was really good. Already a year after the time when they met, the leader of the group wanted to know how his hand was. The guy showed her his hand. She looked and saw that there was not a single mark on it. She asked him again if he really used the Inferno Fist. The guy started explaining that he shouldn't use it without having a plan. The girl asked again because she was sure that he had calculated everything perfectly. After that, she said that it was enough to talk about it and asked about the things he had with him. The guy said that they were all with him. When they opened the cube, she was simply delighted and began to say that everyone should look at these cute little ones and how their colors could be so beautiful. After which the guy said that now their deal could be officially closed. The girl said that it was great and it was a pleasure doing business with him. At that moment, he turned around and said that he was leaving. Then the leader told him to stop and asked if he wanted to join their club. She also said that she was ready to take good care of him. The guy asked her again if this was really a hiring app. The girl said that she was watching him. He is arrogant and greedy. That for Master Laura, the most suitable guy, said that this is more of an insult than an offer. Kim Ho replied that he would refuse in any case. The leader didn't understand why, because she showed him that she had made a great offer. The guy then said she was inviting him only because of the life cube. Isn't that what the girl said he meant? Kim Ho explained to her that he needed season passes to a special training hall, about 4 of them. She was surprised. Could it really be that 4 season passes were in exchange for just deception and a ban? The guy explained that he was cheating. It wasn't a ban, it was just a side bonus to the main ability. She went to find out what the ability was. Then he said that he was ready to show the description of the item if she would do him a favor. The girl wanted to know what kind of favor. Kim Ho told her that she should just pass on a message to the head of the Magic Engineering Club. She should tell them that a newbie had completed the 10 by 10 by 10 cube. She said that she would do it for him, and now he had to tell her the description of the item. He explained that the effect of objects with the element of life placed inside increases by 0103 times. She did not understand how such a thing could even exist. Now it was clear to her why he was asking such a high price. The guy asked her again. They had agreed, and if that was the case he would go. She said that her offer was still valid even without the cube, which surprised him a little, but he didn't say anything. When he was leaving, the girl also told him to think carefully about this really good offer. Then he answered her that he would do so, think about it, and then maybe answer her. A couple of days later, in the dorm area of the Dragon Slayer Academy, Kim Ho's friend asked her if she had a good weekend. She answered yes. The guy asked her again if she was sure, as she looked too tired for a Monday morning. At that moment, he felt a strange gaze from behind. He realized that he was being watched and that they had probably finally made their move. Most likely these people were from the Emerald Tower or the Cube of Nature. He decided that he couldn't just ignore them, but they were annoying, and he even thought maybe he should deal with them, so he told his friend to go ahead without him. He tried to explain to her that he had urgent matters to deal with quickly, and after that he said that they would catch up. The girl didn't resist, she agreed and went forward. The guy turned around, looked at these guys, and asked who they were, why they were following him. If they wanted to say something they should say it to his face. One of them lowered his head and said that he saved him from having to search for them from the Emerald Magic Tower. This is a good enough answer. The second girl said that their leader ordered him to be brought in so that he should just program with them. Kim Ho tried to explain that he was not from the Emerald Tower, and if their leaders wanted something, why didn't he come himself? The guy who was following him said that it seemed like they wouldn't be able to talk here, and some only understood words after a good scolding. Kim Ho told him that he completely agreed and directed one of his hummingbird skills at him in order to paralyze him. Indeed, this guy was paralyzed. The next moment, the girl standing next to him was a little scared. She understood that it was Kalibri and didn't know what to do because she couldn't resist this attack. Kim Ho explained that if they wanted they could hurry, he had other plans for that day. The girl raised both hands and said that no, everything was fine, and he should forgive them for disturbing him. She understood that the movements of the caliber were incredible. He was clearly a pro, so it was better not to mess with him. She would go up to her friend and say that she would take him with her and everyone else could move on. Kim Ho thought it was a relief that at least one of them had understanding. The guy stood up and said to the girl that the rumors about him being a swordsman were just nonsense. The guy didn't understand and pointed out that Kim Ho was just lucky. Next time he would make him pay for this reduction. Well, at that moment a bullet flew right next to them and they managed to avoid its impact at the last moment. The girl turned around, looked back, and didn't understand where she came from. But she also managed to escape this bullet at the last moment. She didn't understand why she was being punished. But two were already lying on the ground and none of them could get up. It was a shame for them. In the lecture they talked about how dungeons try to pull them down as much as possible before they reach the final boss if their resources run out before they complete their raid task and are considered a failure. Kim Ho asked her friend if she left early and managed to come back later. No one understood why Reed was in the tank's dungeon. The teacher continued to say that they cannot dedicate surface dungeons as many times as they want in practice mode, but officially they only have one chance. Their task is to reach and destroy the totem within 5 minutes. He advised us to practice and find the best route before the official attempt, after which he said that everyone was free. One of the guys suggested that Go Hyunwoo go with him. Kim Ho told his friend not to worry about him, he could go ahead with this guy. His friend said that it would be okay if he went on a team with Shin. Kim Ho thought at that moment, and as far as he was concerned his partner had already decided. He turned his head and looked at his new girlfriend. At this point asked him if he is on a team with her. At the same time events were taking place in the Emerald Tower. The guy and girl who failed to bring Kim Ho were punished. Their leader didn't understand how his so-called brother was beaten by Varum while serving on the disciplinary committee, and he didn't understand how these two seemed to deliberately want to drag his name through the mud. The girl tried to do something about it, but he continued to insist that they really considered him a famous swordsman since they had a whole train of assistants and they couldn't even win a fight against him. After which the leader turned around and said that they were ordinary worthless people. The guy was very humiliated. The leader continued to say that he himself knew from the beginning that this would be the case, and his assistant noted that she still thought it would be better to meet with him in person. It was the head of the nature club. Her name was Ha-soon. The leader said that he agreed it was worth preparing for a real meeting. The prestige of the Emerald Tower almost hit rock bottom. The leader's name was Bak Yewa. He kept talking about that strange cube that was in his hands, and that this cube wouldn't even begin to cover their loss. Disrespect for the emeralds must be accompanied by consequences, and he intends to make sure that he pays. His assistant kneeling said that he will do this, he will make him pay. The leader told this guy that no one told him that he had the right to speak. The guy tried to justify himself by saying that this only happened because he weakened the duration and asked for another chance. The leader said that one more defeat and he would be excluded from the tower, and after such conditions he is sure that he wants such a chance. The guy shouted without thinking, yes, he thought he was ready and he wouldn't let me down again. The leader thought for a moment and said that then he would lend him his golem. This time the victory should be indisputable. The guy said that he would not let the leader down. After some time in the area of the Goblin Swamps, Kim Ho ran very quickly with his new girlfriend. He told her that there was no need to rush, it was just a training run. The guy thought that he would get a better reward for completing the dungeon alone, and with a friend it seems like both runs should be completed in less than a minute. He also understood that a solo dungeon would be a cakewalk for him, but a team dungeon would be a real challenge. He also understood that if he told Seo In to quit with Dima about the appearance of monsters, the race would be easy, but it wouldn't help her grow above herself. He understood perfectly well that she had to discover the system herself during training runs. At that moment, an elite enemy appeared in front of them. It was a swamp goblin. When they saw him, they both stopped and had to make a decision. Kim Ho asked his girlfriend if she would dodge him like the first time or try to kill him. The girl asked if she would get points for killing him. The guy told her that she would get 120 points for killing the boss, and she without hesitation replied that she was ready to deal with him. Kim Ho told her that he agreed and was ready to support her, and immediately released a hummingbird at his opponent to paralyze him. The enemy was experienced enough that he was able to repel the hummingbird's attack, but he was still inflicted with damage. He couldn't move as fast as he had before. He was a little paralyzed. That's why the girl decided that she had to fire her bullet straight at the back of his head. Find out its effect, and it made the goblin very angry. His head gnawed at his eyes even more, and he was ready to just tear it apart. He turned sharply towards the girl and began moving straight towards her. In just a few seconds, he was right in front of her. The girl did not lose her head and fired several bullets straight into his head. She stood looking straight at Gulin, not understanding what to do next, but continued shooting him in the corner. Kim Ho knew he needed some help, so he activated the effort skill and upgraded the skill from E to C rank. As soon as he did this, he launched it again, and the hummingbird's attack stopped him. At that moment, the girl was able to calmly pull the trigger and shoot a mana bullet at the goblin. The next second, everything was finished. The hummingbird skill was improved in time. 17 seconds remained, and in total they scored 649 points. Kim Ho will admit that she has noticeably improved her results compared to the first time, and he is willing to bet that she can do it even faster. The girl listened to him until the end and said that, by the way, maybe he could practice her creating magic bullets some other day. The guy thought that she actually likes to compete in VNA more than it seemed at first, and it seems that taking damage from the boss hurt her ego. The guy said that it was time for them to finish and go to the training center. The girl agreed with him. After some time they were at the training center shooting range. The guy told her that this time she would learn a skill called ejection. He started telling her that she uses magic bullets and firearms like tools, but she doesn't conduct mana through them. Then he raised his hand and took one of the bullets. He asked her to let him show him what he meant. He wanted her to imagine that her hand was a magical gun. He extended his hand forward and said that he should focus the mana and then snap his fingers. This is the basic idea of the release. In fact, it's all very similar to the formation of a magical field. He asked her if she wanted to try it with her hand first. The girl said yes. Then the guy asked her to focus mana on her fingertips, after which he told her to now flick the bullet forward. The bullet flew in the other direction and fell. He did not understand how she managed to launch it back. After which the guy said that it was okay, and while they were leaving the magic bullets, she needed to learn to just push the mana out of her fingers. That would be enough. After which the guy turned around, walked on, and told her to continue practicing while he went to choose something for dinner. The girl was a little confused and asked him to wait. He stopped, turned around, and looked at her. She reached into her pocket, then pulled out a card and told him to take it. It was a black card, which meant she was quite a rich girl. When he came to the buffet, he was choosing what to eat, and he overheard the conversation of the representatives of the disciplinary squad. One of them said that it was a limited collection. The second said that it was worth the wait. After which one of the girls saw the guy, raised her hand and called him. The second one turned her head. She was wondering who was standing there. She was a little surprised. Kim Ho didn't lose his composure, waved his hand at them and said hello. Song broke the plastic fork out of surprise. She didn't want it to be him. After which she thought that it would actually be better this way. She still wanted to check something. She got up. She approached the guy and apologized, asked if she could see his palm. He was a little confused and asked why. The girl thought that the unknown thief used the Fist of Inferno in the temporary storage, and that he was also experienced enough to play and control the hummingbird. She thought that perhaps he had a connection with the thieves' club. Of course, there was an obvious suspect, but I still wanted to check this version. The girl replied that she thought it was something like palm reading. She just wanted to check something. She thought if he used the Fist of Inferno, there would be a burn mark left. The guy looked at her and said that he didn't expect that she believed in superstitions. The girl thought that his behavior was suspicious and that he was trying to get out of it. She said, "Do we really have anything to hide?" Then the guy extended his hand and showed her his palm. He was ready for her to look. This really surprised her. Unexpectedly for herself, she asked him to show her her other hand. The guy showed her the Uber and asked if she really liked fortune telling that much. She thought this couldn't be happening. There was no trace on his hands. The guy asked how long she planned to hold his hand. At that moment she threw his arms around him and told him she was sorry, after which she turned around and very quickly left. The guy suddenly told her to stop. Didn't she want to predict his future? He wanted to ask her if he could expect good luck. The girl stopped, turned around, and shouted at him that hard times and serious problems awaited him. At that moment the guy realized that it looked like they were continuing to search for those caught in the temporary storage, but he played his role well, so for the time being he was not suspected. The very next day, when Kim Ho started training with his new girlfriend, he told her to just do as they had trained before. She said that she understood everything, and the next moment she prepared her 2 huge pistols. At that moment she fired several shots to kill the goblin standing in front of her. The goblin received one blow after another and was paralyzed and could not move. This time everything was much better. They simultaneously fired a hummingbird at him from one side and a magic bullet from the other. This 2-pronged attack resulted in the goblin standing in front of him being destroyed. The scoreboard showed that they still had 1 minute and 20 seconds left, and the total was 728 points. The guy was happy with their result. He said it was just super, and she rolled them out. All yesterday's training paid off. For the first time in a long time the girl smiled and looked at him. She was also pleased. When they left he told her again that a solo dungeon wouldn't be difficult, but it would be better to practice the new skill a little before the trip. She agreed. At that moment he thought if he had already been a frequent dungeon player, for duo a single player would be a piece of cake, and he needed to focus on quests. Then he went into the goblin swamp and used his new skill. He thought he needed to quickly sort everything out here. He focused on the fire fist because it worked for him last time, after which he dealt a powerful blow such that the fire completely consumed all the monsters that were nearby. After this fiery attack he stood and watched as it began to fly all around. At that moment he wondered if he had overdone it in the artificial dungeon. He still had trouble controlling his strength. He had scored 948 points. He should have remembered to delete the replay before leaving. In any case, if he already killed the boss and received bonus points, then he decided that he would get the maximum and everything else. Look at the scoreboard. He thought about the fact that he should think carefully, since from the moment he received the quest he knew what he wanted. This skill is ideal for him. It is a versatile support that contributes both to combat power and to support. At that moment he received a new skill, the Blessing of the Western Wind. Now he was a support with a minimum attribute of wind, after which he decided to leave the training dungeon. He was already met there. It was the leader from the Emerald Tower. He introduced himself as Bak Yonghwa, and he is from the Emerald Magic Tower. The girl standing next to him introduced herself as Ha Suyin from the Nature Club. They asked to move to a comfortable place to talk. The girl about vampires apologized for what happened. The matter did not tolerate delays, and she behaved rudely, and it was very unfortunate. The girl from the very beginning started talking about what she heard. He has a special item. Kim Ho asked her if she really needs it. The leader of the Emerald Tower asked if he could look at this item. The guy put it in front of him and said yes, of course. What happened next no one could even imagine. The little tiger cub, sitting on his owner's shoulders, immediately jumped into the box. The owner tried to stop him and said no, but it was too late. He was already inside. When the leader saw all this, he said that he didn't expect that it was true. The owner wanted to take her pet away, but he liked to lie there. The head of the Nature Club said that judging by the energy she senses, it looks like a powerful artifact, and she asked to see its description. The girl tried to convince him that they would keep this information a secret, but the guy threw up his hands and said that if that was the case, then he agreed. The leader of the Emerald Tower, when he saw the description, realized that it increases the effect of life element items placed inside by 0103 times. This was a truly incredible item. The head of the Nature Club also said that he wasn't going to give it to anyone else by any chance. The guy replied that he himself would find it useful. The leader of the Emerald Tower asked again that this item glows only in the hands of someone who knows exactly how to handle it, and asked him to hand it over to them. At that moment Kim Ho thought that this guy seemed so noble that it was enough to bring tears to his eyes, but at the same time he said that he understood him perfectly well, but something was stopping him. The head of the club Nature said that he simply had to say what he wanted, and she would do everything in her power to get it. The guy thought that was better. He raised his hand, showed 4 fingers, and announced that he needed 4 special passes to the gym, or 1 pass and 3 items of equivalent value. He tried to explain to them that he wanted, for example, an unused skill book or something like that. The leader of the Emerald Tower jumped up and shouted that this was nonsense and he had gone too far with his chicks. The head of Deep Nature said that they could get a pass, but some guy with a skill book said that there would be no deal. after which he took his club and said that he was leaving. He was serious about it. At that moment, the little tiger cub's owner stood up. She accidentally overheard their conversation. She said that she had an unused skills book. One of the heads of the nature club asked her again. Nari replied that she had no plans for this book and that she had not used it, so it would most likely remain in her inventory. She only did this because her pet Bima really likes this cube. When this tiger cub took his head out of the cube, he looked at his owner and meowed. The head of the nature club told the girl she could do whatever she wanted, and the girl responded, "Thank you very much." All the terms of the deal were met. They were ready to be charged immediately. The guy was so glad that they quickly reached an agreement. Having received what he needed, he said that it was a good deal, and if they had everything he could go free. But at that moment he was stopped by the same guy who had already tried to attack him. He said that he had another proposal for him and that he should fight him. Kim Ho, you saw him no, and thanked everyone else for the deal again. The guy was outraged by such an answer. Kim Ho tried to explain to him that he was not obliged to come running at the first call and fight whenever he felt like it, but the guy thought that the duel completed the honor. Then Kim Ho answered him, would a guy who cared about his honor attack one person with two people? It was a disgrace for them. Kim Ho turned around and leaving said that he had no reason to waste his time on something that would not bring him any benefit, and that he could pretend to be a loser if that was what he wanted to show off. The leader of the Emerald Tower said that then he is ready to offer him a VIP ticket. This is a good enough deal for him to fight. Kim Ho thought that was very generous, and he replied that in that case he would agree. The guy from the Emerald Tower said that he could set the date himself, and Kim Ho told him that 2 days would be suitable for him. Then the guy asked again why 2 days later. Kim Ho raised the book up and said that he needed to master it. The leader of the Emerald Tower laughed very hard. He couldn't even imagine that I could get and master something new in just 2 days, and said that in that case he should try. Kim Ho looked at him and said that he could see for himself in exactly 2 days. These 2 days passed, and everyone began to gather at the arena to watch this fight. The leader of the group of thieves did not understand why this guy Kim Ho even agreed to this duel, and also thought that this hook would probably switch to some kind of trick. Although he answered that he most likely agreed because he could win and she herself knew about it, the girl exhaled, but she still had a premonition. At that moment she thought that she needed to watch carefully in case he started indicating something very wrong again. When the rivals stood opposite each other on arena, a representative from the Emerald Tower told Kim Ho that it was strange that he hadn't escaped yet. The leader of the Emerald Tower said that this duel will be recorded and everyone will be able to watch it. He asked if they agreed. Kim Ho was a little tense at this statement. He seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Well, his opponent immediately said yes, so he had no choice but to agree. The leader of the Emerald Tower is the Greek, so it's time to begin, and both sides must enter the arena. At this point, rocky terrain appeared on the map, and according to the rule, they would have been eliminated by time. They were given 10 minutes, and the battle began. The young man's opponent shouted that he was lucky last time, but this time everything would be different, and he would show him his level. Kim Ho stood there, the box there. He wouldn't have seen it in front of him. He just twirled it a few times with his 2 fingers, after which he extended his hand and pointed it towards his opponent, who did not expect that they would use an earthen machine gun. At that moment Kim Ho asked him what he wanted to show, but his opponent was already lying on the ground and couldn't say anything clearly. Kim Ho, I looked at the enemy and said there was no need to pretend. It didn't hurt him at all, it was just sand. His opponent had rage points. He shouted that he wanted to see how long he could stay so relaxed and threw a huge stone ball at him. It was an earthen comp. It seemed to him that this was a strong enough blow and that he would be able to cause damage this way. Well, what happened next no one expected. Kim Ho also sent this huge earth ball in the other direction. Then he stopped him and began to show how he could control the same earth ball that was supposed to damage him. His opponent was so surprised that he didn't understand what was happening and whether he would be hit again and how he was doing it. But before he could finish speaking, this ball of earth knocked him off his feet and he fell to the ground again. His opponent thought it was some kind of curse. If things continued at this pace, he would never win. His opponent, raising his hands, said that it was good that he admitted that he was not a coward. He thought that he did not want to resort to this. He had no other choice. He believed that this was the only chance and he should emerge victorious from this duel. Standing on the ground, he asked Kim Ha what he thought about Ed. It was his hope that he decided to use the tree golem about the guy. It was an improved golem created by the power of the forest and the old tree. The leader of the rude thieves, when she saw what was happening, said that the enemy was shameless and that it was dishonest to act like that. She was very loudly indignant about why there was a third-class golem there. She thought it was too much. The leaders of the Emerald Tower also said that he himself did not expect this, but he believes that if it helps to smear Kim Ho, then everything is for the best. The leader of the group of thieves thought that while he was being watched, he would not be able to use his fist inferno, but she even thought about intervening at some point. Many of those watching thought that the guy had come to the end and whether he would actually be able to collect his bones after such a collision. Kim Ho thought about it, but he was prepared for such a turn of events and stood absolutely calm. 2 days ago in the Mana training room, he was reading the book he received and deciding which support was the most useful. When he read this book, he thought that it depended on the situation, so there are different types of supports such as healers or buffing or debuffing. I read this book and he thought that if a universal support is needed, they simply won't find a better skill than this one. His opponent was happy. He thought that he could crush him with one blow and wanted to see him dance. He believed that if he struck with the golem, he would be able to destroy his opponent. But the next moment something went wrong. Kim Ho was prepared for this outcome. He pushed off and jumped up. At that moment he thought that for him, who had chosen the path of a support, the windy element, he had only one way out. The skill from the acquired book suited him perfectly. He was at the top near the golem's eye. After that, he delivered a blow that was aimed straight at the top of the golem, where he could not stay on his feet, staggered and began to fall backwards. Kim Ho was in complete control of the situation, so he extended his hand and used the wind force skill. He came out in this bay of winners. The spectators began to shout that he was a good man, and a weight was lifted from their hearts. The leader of the Emerald Tower thought how this guy could even deal with the golem, how he was able to win at all. Well, he had no choice but to approach the young man and tell him to keep the promised VIP ticket. The guy thanked him. Kim Ho suddenly asked if he could suggest something. He suggested making this fight recording private. He said that the Emerald Tower probably also wanted to hide this fight. The leader of the Emerald Tower considered him a merchant but wanted to listen to him. Kim Ho said that he doesn't need anything for now, but later the leader should fulfill one small request of his. He said that they agreed. The young man even spoke as if he was doing the Mundalgenya, but in fact he was also interested in hiding the repetition. Kim Ho thought the less people knew about his new wind power ability, the easier it would be for him. Go Hyunwoo came up to him at that moment and said that he was a good boy. The young man replied that he was just in time. He handed his friend a ticket and said that it was his season pass as he had promised. The guy was very surprised. Kim Ho then reminded him once again that they had agreed that within 2 weeks he would find this pass for him. The leader of the group of thieves intervened in this conversation. She came up and asked him what else he had to say about Null, because a true thief always searches for something. The guy laughed and said, "Is she really that smart?" Then he turned around and asked her what about his previous request. The girl said he probably meant the Magic Engineering Club. She smiled, looked at him, and replied that they had just asked to meet and wanted to know what he would say. The guy is great. He's ready to go right now. He wasn't going to delay. After some time, he was in workshop number 1 of magical engineering. When he opened the door, he was surprised by the scale. The atmosphere was completely different compared to workshop number 4 where he got the cube. A guy came up to him and asked him if he was that same Kim Ho. He was a little surprised. This guy greeted me again and said that his name was Bo Jae-suk and that he was the third-year chairman of the Magic Engineering Club. Then he added that he had already been briefed on the situation. Then he suggested the guy go to the office because they would need to talk there. Kim Ho thought that he was being impatient. When they were walking along the road, the chairman of this Kalu guy, was it really he who assembled the 10 by 10 by 10 cube, and if so then it's better to get down to business. Then he started saying that in fact the cube drawing belonged to their club, but he doesn't like senseless conflicts. Besides, no one else would have assembled it anyway, and he just needed to look at the finished product. He immediately offered a deal. Kim Ho replied that unfortunately he no longer had a club, and the leader was surprised that he didn't understand where the cube had gone. Then the guy explained to him that he handed over this cube to the nature clubs. The leader said, "What kind of nonsense is this? I wasted my time." He wasted his time and he leaves. Kim Ho stopped him at that moment and said, "Is this really true?" And he thinks that he crossed empty-handed. He started showing him something. Hold on, asked what it is. He looked at these sheets of paper and said, "Is this really a drawing of a 10 by 10 by 10 cube?" Look carefully, he added that it cannot be that someone documented all these arrays. Then he became, I said that here he gets a piece. The leader then added that he wanted to check if the guy had the remaining part, to which he replied that of course he did. The leader then said that he understood everything and the guy should lay out what he wants. Kim Ho said that he should allow her to use the equipment of workshop number 1. The leader said that they use it during the day so he can give the guy access from midnight until dawn. He was satisfied with this and said that he agreed and should lay out the remaining sheets for him, which he did. When he looked at the remaining sheets, the leader offered the guy to join their club. Kim Ho thanked him, but he was forced to refuse. Then the leader said that he was very sorry to sell such a product, but what can he do? He can use not only the equipment of their workshop but also the bar from workshop number 4. If he needs it, just leave copies of the drawings in return. After which he said that he was leaving and wished the guy good luck. Kim Ho was completely satisfied because everything worked out for him. At that moment he thought that the foundation for creating his final class weapon had been laid. The leader of the Emerald Tower and the head of the disciplinary squad visited the medical center where their boyfriend was. The leader of the Emerald Tower was determined. The head of the disciplinary squad asked him to reconsider his decision to expel. He believed that among the first-year students only a few were capable of dealing with the golem, and he replied that the fact that he had disgraced the Emerald Tower remained a fact. The head of the disciplinary squad said that this guy seriously let them down, but this is really the end. And in fact, he is not the only one responsible for their reputation. At this moment, the leader of the tower stopped. He turned sharply and shouted, "Is the disciplinary committee really going to point out the Emerald Tower?" The head of the committee said that he was only asking for a fair decision and nothing more. Then the leader from the Emerald Tower took a breath and said that he did not understand what he wanted. The head of the committee replied that he was asking for a chance for this guy. The leader of Emerald Tower said that he is giving 2 months, during which time he will observe Guang Jichel's ratings and then make a decision. The head of the disciplinary committee had no choice, so he said that he agreed more than. The leader from the Emerald Tower went further and said that in that case they had an agreement. The head of the disciplinary committee remained standing. He found it difficult to come to terms with this. He turned his head and saw Song Chunhai and decided to call her for a conversation. The girl came out from around the corner and asked if he had called her. Then the head of the disciplinary committee said that he had noticed her when she was hiding in Arena's stands. He also told her that if she was there herself, he would not recount the fight. He wanted to know what he thought, whether she could defeat Kim Ho in a fight. The girl lowered her head because she didn't want to tell him that she wasn't sure. The head of the committee, when he heard the answer, was hesitant and thought, what does that mean? Then he asked her if she had checked his hands. The girl replied that yes, both of them had not a single scratch or wound, they were completely clean. The head of the committee thought that if he had really used the Fist of Inferno, the damage would definitely not have had time to recover in such a short time, so he was wrong. But in the other direction, it was completely obvious to him that this arrogant look, as if everyone around him was not fit to obey him, it was hard to imagine that it was someone else. The head of the disciplinary committee told her to forgive him and that she would have to work a little more. The girl told him that he doesn't have to apologize and that she wants it and will definitely catch him by the tail. 3 weeks have passed and Monday has arrived. The manager said that like last week, teamwork is important in this match, but the goal will be slightly different. He explained that in the process of interacting with partners, they might discover weaknesses that they had not noticed before, and to compensate for them, the school organized a mentoring program. So they had to take the chance to think things through for a week, and then the manager finished and one of the guys asked Kim Ho and the mentoring application was sent. The guy understood that third-year students or graduates would be selected to suit his needs better than students, and when else would such a person have the opportunity? When Go Hyun-woo heard such explanations, he said that he definitely needed to try it too and thanked her for the advice. Kim Ho looked at his friend Si-Yane and asked her if she really wouldn't. The girl said that she was lazy and that she'd better sleep. Kim Ho still has a lot going on, so she really needs mentoring and decided that she needs to be persuaded. Go Hyun-woo approached the guy and said that he wanted him to perform with him in this fight. Kim Ho said that he is ready to do it together this time. The girl suddenly woke up and asked how she was and grabbed Kim Ho's hand. Go Hyun-woo replied to her, "I'm waiting, go warm up, they are held twice, so you just need to play a pose with each one." She agreed. And then he added that he needed to go and train some more, and they said goodbye until the next day. When the next day came, training fights were supposed to begin at the academy. Go Hyun-woo arena and ask your friend how long he has been waiting for Kim Ho. He answered that no, WhatsApp just arrived. Kim Ho looked at his friend and didn't understand what was wrong with him. The atmosphere had become somehow more tense than it had been yesterday. He stood looking at him and telling him to take care of him. Kim Ho looked like his core had risen to rank C faster than our wife. Go Hyun-woo asked him how yesterday's duel with So went. The guy replied that they won, but there was one thing. Yesterday was indeed a very intense battle, and they had a serious opponent. Yesterday, Hong Yanawa, a promising student from the Ruby Magic Tower, and as expected Seo Yain, their rival, came out against them. In fact, the result turned out to be more one-sided than we expected. The most important thing that happened in the end was that he pissed himself the most. She ended up in the very epicenter of the battle. Seo Yain is severely lacking in defensive skills, making her easy to damage. That's why he had to intervene in this fight so that his partner wouldn't get hurt. He also attacked with his wind, extinguished the fire, and approached the enemy to inflict damage on them. What happened next none of his opponents expected, and at some point they were already celebrating their victory. Kim Ho, when he approached them, touched the garden of one of his opponents and pushed him away. His book came to me and he was able to stay on his feet and was thrown back. He could no longer attack. And the second opponent from the Ruby Tower was very scared. She didn't know what to do and how to act. Kim Ho stood silently looking at her. He didn't intend to take much damage, so he only saved his partner. After the match, he once again offered her to apply for mentorship, but she still didn't agree. It seemed like she wasn't interested at all. His friend said that maybe she was going through a bad period. Kim Ho said at that moment that she wished she could at least once lose to someone without a sum. His friend asked why he was talking like that. At that moment they were matched with an opponent. The subscriber was assigned. They just needed to show what they were capable of. What a surprise they were when they saw the enemy standing in front of them. The opponent was So Yain, and this meant only one thing: he could now show her mistakes. For a moment he was even glad. He thought that this was a wonderful, excellent opportunity to show her own shortcomings with his fingers. Go Hyun-woo looked at his friend and asked if he really thought they would win. The guy said of course. The command to begin was given. Kim Ho told his partner that he was taking the girl on himself, and he replied that it was accepted. When he ran closer, the girl threw a grenade. As expected, she had no plan. Kim Ho replied that he was sorry, but that wouldn't help her at all, and continued moving forward. The next thing we have is she fired several bullets in his direction, trying to stop him. All these bullets passed by because he knew their trajectories and could avoid them. The next thing she did was take out her machine gun and was ready to shoot him since he was very close. Well, I decided that it was enough to joke with her. I made one with my hand and then another, after which I knocked the machine gun out of her hands. He was ready to hit her in order to show her weak spots. He swung his fist and almost hit her in the forehead, but at the last moment he stopped his hand. After which he snapped 2 fingers and released Showdown to her. She loudly screamed "I." The girl sat down on the ground. The guy asked her how she was and then asked again if she would continue. She had no choice but to turn her head away and say that the guy thought he had managed to hurt her pride. I looked at my partner and thought that he had already finished, but these two were still fighting. Shin Byung-chul previously mentioned that the Guild Federation has another hidden talent. It was the fact that he was moving his right hand unnaturally, and he had suspected this from the very beginning of the fight. The next moment he came closer and told them both to stop and freeze, after which the young man turned to the guy and said that he knew that he was hiding his real level and asked him about a serious battle. The guy replied that he didn't understand why he took it because he was actually fighting seriously. Kim Ho then told him that if he was worried about the replay, they could keep it private for extra motivation. He told him about a ghost without money. If the guy wins, he will give him information about it. Kim Ho thought if anonymity was really so important to him that he was willing to hide his strength, then the guy would definitely not refuse such a prize. The guy asked from the day of surprise how he knew. Kim Ho replied that he had already said that if he wins he will tell him everything. The guy had no choice but to agree to this battle. He immediately took out his sword. And you said if that's what he wants, he's ready to play according to his terms. Go Hyun-woo looked at the guy at that moment and saw that his gaze immediately changed, and he also said that he would also fight at full strength. After which he took a deep breath before starting the attack and before starting the fight that lay ahead of him. After this, each of them started to attack you forward. None of them tried to lose. But the scoreboard showed that Go Hyun-woo had 87%, and the fight continued. Each of them tried to attack as quickly as possible and find a weak point. The enemy had 73% success rate. Then new data appeared on the board, and it was written that Go Hyun-woo had 68%. Go Hyun-woo thought that this was the end. His opponent was much stronger than him and would be able to defeat him. But on the other hand, he was not going to give up and wanted to go to the very end. His body was much more damaged, and the next moment the enemy's sharp sword hit his forehead. Go Hyun-woo was not a famous opponent, so he avoided this, and in the next moment began to attack himself. He used an attack called Pure Flow. His opponent didn't even have time to react. Go Hyun-woo was upset because this time his sword was broken. This only meant one thing, that he couldn't control his power. But nothing to pass, the mare is completely broken, and he simply did not have it. They did not understand what to do next. Kim Ho saw this and said that it was enough for them to attack each other since they were in the same state. He then ordered them both to rest since victory was already with Kim Ho's team, and there was no point in fighting any further. Go Hyun-woo thought that even though by the system standards they had won and remained in the game, he should have admitted that he had lost in the fight itself, because his opponent had shown his true strength and everything was decided at the moment when he was unable to repel his attack. Kim Ho thought at that moment that his friend seemed to be a little short of his talent level, but that was only for now. His opponent lifted his head, opened one eye, and looked at the scoreboard, which upset him greatly. He was unhappy with the fact that he knew that he lost to Kim Ho. Did he really think so? The guy replied that although he wasn't happy with the result, it was actually good. Before leaving, the enemy said that he wanted to ask something. He was interested in how the guy understood what he was saving. Was it really that noticeable? Kim Ho smiled and added that Danyu's hand with the sword moved a little unnaturally, and he also added that it played a role that he looks too usual. The guy didn't understand what it meant to be too usual, was that really the only reason he understood. Kim Ho told him to judge for himself what kind of place the Dragon Slayer Academy is. The guy replied that it is in this place that the strongest from all corners of the world gather, probably usually here, and it is right there in the eye. Then he understood what was going on and said thank you very much for your help, and he also asked for something. It was a ghost without a shadow. Kim Ho told him that he promised to tell him this if the guy wins here. He said that he would definitely try next time and that he was ready to fight at any time. Go Hyun-woo approached his friend and said that he was very embarrassed for embarrassing himself like that. He wanted to know how his friend assessed this undertaking, and his friend replied that he had been able to probe the enemy and find a loophole that allowed him to deliver a decisive blow. Go Hyun-woo looked at his weapon and said that he had a problem with it and that things would not go any further. Kim Ho explained to him that it was easy to solve, wasn't it, and he had to find himself a better weapon. He was ashamed to admit it, but his financial situation left much to be desired. Then the guy said that it was not necessary to buy weapons with money. He didn't really know how to do it. Kim Ho asked him how many points he had, and at that moment he looked at the table. Go Hyun-woo replied that he had scored about 5,000 points, which was enough to buy a weapon. Go to the table, he said that he can buy one long ball of rank E and one sort of rank D, and with the remaining points he bought heat catalysts. He wanted to know what this reacts with and what they are for. Then he explained that these were materials for creating an item. He would make a beautiful thing for him, after which he turned around and walked down the corridors. That evening he was near workshop number 4. He was thinking that the matches this week were over and he should start making a new thing for his friend. He opened the door and went into the workshop. The guy who was sitting in this workshop didn't want to talk to him, but he realized that it seemed like his people had scolded him for the drawings and now they probably don't like him. Kim Ho thought that he certainly felt sorry for this guy, but he had to forgive him, and this time he copied his skills and goals. Now that he had the power of the wind, he could abandon the hummingbird. The guy looked around and thought that this time he couldn't get it like last time with the cube drawing, but will give up on getting good materials too. In fact, all this junk is blanks that for some reason were not brought to mind. In other words, they were perfectly suitable as spare parts. He thought that it was usually easier to get new materials than to recycle old ones, but that was usually. He sat down at the table and started working. The guy who was in the workshop would occasionally spy on what he was doing, after which he couldn't stand it any longer and directly asked Kim Ho what he was doing. The guy replied that he was rummaging through the trash trying to get at least some materials. Then the guy from the workshop told him if he doesn't mind he can watch Kim Ho too. Of course he doesn't mind. When the guy from the workshop came up, he was very surprised how the materials turned out so clean, because in fact he was sorting out junk, but they were like new. Kim Ho thought at that moment that maybe he should throw him a line and maybe it would actually work. He asked his older friend if he wanted an exchange. The guy from the workshop asked what he wanted in exchange. Kim Ho told him that he needed a cooler, a central axle, and high-strength wire, and then the workshop guy stopped him. He wanted to clarify that the leader and the group would not scold him for helping him. Kim Ho answered him that he thought he would not object to an equal exchange. If the guy is so worried, he can ask his manager himself, and that's what he did. He sent him a text message. He looked at the phone for a while and thought that his boss had read it, but there was no answer. It looked like he was busy. Yes, the guy thought, since the leader didn't answer anything, and at that moment the door suddenly opened and the leader of their group stood on the threshold. The manager approached the guy and asked if he had really cleared out all the junk in the workshop. Kim Ho answered him that yes. Then the manager said that it was not bad and decided to look at it himself. Of course, it was also junk, but its components were worth a lot. After which the manager put another one on your chair and said he could figure it out. The guy looked and said he didn't know because it would actually take some time. The manager said that he understood that the payment would be appropriate and he could be sure of that. The guy replied that he needed some materials so he would charge them for the work. The manager asked him to send a list and he would prepare everything right away. The manager also said that it was not urgent and he could take his time to send him an SMS with a list of what was needed. The guy from this workshop, when he saw all this, said that if he does this work, then maybe he can also fulfill his request. It was necessary to find out what kind of request it was. Then the guy from the workshop said that there was one crappy one, but he couldn't figure it out either. Kim Ho said that he would help without any problems. When he opened his eyes, the next morning had already arrived. He thought that the rest would have to be finished after classes. When he came to class, he was thinking about only one thing, that he was short on time. He thought that maybe he should take a nap before class. Well, when the place opened, he was very surprised because he saw his friend. The girl, as usual, was sleeping on the desk. He didn't understand why she was here so early, and already here, and yesterday she disappeared without saying a word. He approached her and asked if she had at least had breakfast, and if not, if she wanted a snack. The girl didn't react to his words at all. He thought she was still half asleep. The guy told her that yesterday's fight was too one-sided and he just wanted to show her her weaknesses. He continued to say that she probably already understood everything herself. He brought her something to eat, saying that her fighting style loses its effectiveness as soon as the enemy understands where she is. And if she has already learned to create magic bullets, it is time for her to move on to developing auxiliary skills. She raised her head and asked if he would teach her. The guy replied that he would of course like to teach her, but it would be better if another shooter did it. Even if it's difficult to find a mentor, the girl said she agrees, and she will definitely find one. At that moment, another friend of theirs came over and asked her if she was still applying, and in fact it was a great idea. Kim Ho asked his friend if he was okay, and he replied that yes, he was okay thanks to him. He started talking about how his body wasn't working at all, but he asked permission to test the new weapon in the remaining match. Kim Ho told him no problem, and he also offered him to try it and hand him something in his hand. Imagine his surprise when he saw an ordinary office violin. The guy said that it was only at first glance, but in fact it strengthens his equipment. It was a durable paperclip that protected the weapon from damage. He told him to test his new weapon and equipment in the remaining battle, and also this reliable thing. Go Hyun-woo had to think for a long time about the remaining fight with another of her classmates. Their opponents were the senior horses, who were much more experienced and stronger, and one of them was Pak Nari, a promising nature club member with her mystical beast. You have to be careful. At that moment, the girl looked at her tiger cub and told him to get ready. The very next moment, the tiger cub jumped off her shoulder to the side and landed on the ground right next to her. And it was already a rather large kitten that was sitting on her shoulders, and a huge tiger that was ready to pounce and tear her apart. The first thing she said was to order her pet forward, and this huge tiger in one jump got the guy and tried to hit him with his paw. Go Hyun-woo raised his sword at the last moment, or somehow managed to protect himself from the blow. His partner didn't lose her head at that moment. She also came up from behind and tried to attack this huge tiger. She used the snow spirit's palm to calm the tiger and freeze its mind. For a moment it even seemed like the girl had succeeded and was able to stop the enemy. Because the attack didn't take place, Park Nari's points were low, and she lost this fight. The tiger wasn't going to stop. After part of his dema was frozen, he decided to try to attack the guy again. He swung his sharp claws again to strike at Go Hyun-woo. As usual, his sword was shattered into small pieces and he was left without a weapon. He thought that this was the maximum for an E-rank weapon. The tiger didn't step back. He was ready to attack the guy again. He was also ready. At some point, the guy even started to say that if they go on like this, he's afraid they have no chance of winning. The girl agreed and said that they need to change their approach. At that moment it was clear that Pak Nari's glasses had been restored again, and the tigers had reset the damage he had taken. At that moment they thought that it was worse than this strategy of putting a magical beast on the front line and constantly restoring it. In fact, the magic caster was left defenseless. With this kind of shooting, I was completely holding on to the mystical beast. The guy thought that in this case he knew what to do. And his partner also understood that in this case it was necessary to hit directly at the source and not at the animal. So they pushed off quickly, leaving the animals behind, and headed towards the source. She must be defenseless. Everything was exactly like that, but she had a partner who had a crystal in her hands and who could predict such an outcome. That is why they put the Gaia barrier in front of them, so that no one would come close to them. When they got closer, a barrier really blocked their way, and it was unbearable for them to get to their opponents. His partner decided to use the palm of the Supreme Snow Spirit to freeze all living things, while the guy used pure flow. I thought that what was happening was not surprising, but it was not at all easy for them to break through. But if the next blow penetrated the protective spell, then everything could change. At that moment he looked at the scoreboard, but behind him was a huge animal that actually attacked him, and he saw that he had lost. When he reviewed this retreat the next day, he thought how ashamed he was. Of course, the enemy was clearly stronger, and he even fought well. Kim Ho tried his best to calm him down. The guy asked how he would act in such a situation, and he saw, to be honest, this is not a question of strategy or technique. In fact, there is too big a difference in characteristics, especially when it comes to equipment. After all, Pak Nari is a promising fighter of the Nature Club. She has a wide arsenal of skills and characteristics, and she recently acquired a life cube from him, so she is hung from head to toe with all sorts of useful things. Go Hyunwoo told his friend that if you listen to him, his defeat was inevitable. The opponent not only had skillful skills and was fully prepared. Kim Ho didn't know if he should talk about it at the moment, but he decided to say that it was impossible to compare with her in characteristics from the very beginning, but that didn't mean that he had no chance against her at all. Go Hyunwoo doesn't really have a way for him to defeat her. Kim Ho answered him that of course yes, and this method, the demonic sword, is a mandatory defab item for any boy. The demon sword guy, when I heard about it, he said that he didn't even know about its existence and didn't know that such an item existed. He was surprised how much he knew it all. Kim Ho's priority is preventing the palanca of weapons, and now they should focus on obtaining artifacts that increase the rank of hand weapons to a higher one. In fact, increasing the rank of a weapon was not an easy task, but it seemed like a way out of the situation. Kim Ho said that they are just starting out and they have every chance to develop, and he also said that you can just get items in the dungeon. Go Hyunwoo answered him, now it's a week of battles, so it's unlikely that they will succeed, isn't it? The guy replied that his wife will be there next week before the dungeon. His friend wanted to know why. The guy then replied that they were not qualified. In fact, the dungeon differs from the simulation in that there they really risk their lives, and no one will let a first-year student into a fight that would risk his life. Then he asked, so at the moment there is no option at all. Kim Ho answered that perhaps right now it is absolutely possible. After thinking for a bit, he said that it was most likely official. Then his friend asked again what official meant. Kim Ho answered him that they could sneak in there secretly. For such cases they had one useful acquaintance. At that moment he wrote to his new friend Shin Byung-chul, who could help them, and he was ready to come. Indeed, after some time Shin himself came and asked how he could help them. He told me that they needed to go to the dungeon, and the Osadi added that Monday evening would be just right. Shin asked again which dungeon number they were most interested in. Then Kim Ho answered him that it was number 388. The guy took out a notebook and pen from his inside pocket. He looked at what could be done there at number 388. It was an altar of a feathered serpent, and it was Ragadi. He also said that this was a dungeon for 4. He asked who else was coming. The guys were sitting at the table, looked at each other. They weren't going to hurt anyone. I'll get out of this situation. So they said that they were going only the two of them. Then Shin told them that if something goes wrong, he will not be responsible for anything. KTM Ho told him that they wouldn't die if it got too hot, they'd just run away. Then their friends said let it be that way, then they should get ready for Monday evening and ask how much this service would cost them. Shin looked at them and said he doesn't understand what kind of dress we're talking about because he helped him out during the raid and he thinks that they're calculating. Kim Ho thought that he hadn't even imagined that it would be the guy who would first raise the topic of debt repayment. Shin said that he himself had only been to the dungeon once. Kim Ho thought that this guy also wanted to gain experience. So I told him that it doesn't matter even if he goes for the first time, the main thing is determination. Then he replied that it goes without saying that he will try his best. Kim Ho, upon hearing this, said that if they were already hunting for experience, then let him add another dungeon number 104. Shin looked and said that this is a Black Sands dungeon, a high-level dungeon, and he is not an assistant there. Kim suggested that he try to discuss this with the boss. Shin answered him that in general it was not so impossible. He would ask Nuna, and then they would see each other on Monday evening. Now it was necessary to make a plan. His friend wanted to know how they would proceed next. Kim said that first they will go to the guaranteed drank dungeon, the altar of the feathered serpent. There he will get his weapon and he will also collect something. He then said that they would take a couple of days to prepare, negotiate with the thieves club regarding the black sand and prepare the necessary equipment. In such a cool dungeon, even the slightest mistake can cost the name of his life. His friend said that he was ready. Kim added that he will have a very important role. Naturally, skills are important, no less important that he acts in a coordinated manner. For this he would need to understand the dungeons no worse than he does. His friend listened to the end and said that he agreed. Kim gave him a guide to completing the dungeon, and then he said that he had memorized every single word of it before they started their hike.